I'll just continue to add people as they come in. But just to quickly recap how this thing started, it was a cryptocurrency meetup in my local town, and we got shut down for violating COVID rules. So the following week, we went online, and we had a good turnout. It was 20 locals, and we just talked about cryptocurrency. But I figured that this could evolve into something much more and really bring a lot of great information to everybody. So I started reaching out to all the anarchist friends that I've met throughout my travels. And last week we had G. Edward Griffin on to talk about the Federal Reserve, and then we had an open chat to talk about cryptocurrency. So yeah, there's about 50% of the chat room, a lot of the people might know, and the rest are really influential people that I met along the way. So the format's subject to change, but currently it's bring a speaker in for about an hour, and then they can stay longer, followed by just letting some people in, followed by an open discussion. So this week we have Dayna Martin, who's going to focus on peaceful parenting and radical unschooling. She has to leave at 7, so let's be mindful of her time. And yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Dayna. So let's try to keep our microphones on mute unless we have something to say. And yeah, take it away, Dayna.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Dayna Martin, and I'm an advocate for peaceful parenting and unschooling. And I have 4 kids. I have a son who is 21, a daughter who's 19, another daughter who's 16, and a son who's 13. So 4 kids who have never been to school, and they've never been punished. They've never been parented traditionally, which might be a shock to some of you because it sounds really crazy at first. But my kids have always lived in what we call a partnership-based paradigm. So most parents are trained to train their kids. And most people are really shocked to hear that they've been trained to parent their kids in a certain way. But the authoritarian paradigm is what most people think of when they think of parenting. And that's the focus on obedience and compliance and focusing on the needs of the parents solely. The parents' needs for compliance, obedience, uninterrupted sleep, and for kids to be, obedient to their parents. So the way that I'm doing it, and that most people in this realm are doing it, which is growing actually, especially with COVID, focusing on the needs of everybody in the family equally. And so I don't focus on my kids' behavior. I never have. I focus on the needs under the behavior. And that might sound really radical to some people, but my kids have never been in school. They've never done any kind of school work, but yet they're happy and successful in their own right. So I want to share about this philosophy, but it might be, there's a lot to it, and we only have an hour. So I'm really happy to take questions. But so in the beginning, when I first started on my road as a mother, my son, Devin, my 21-year-old, when he was a baby, he was born in the hospital with a midwife. And shortly after his birth, the nurses came into the room and turned on the TV, which was really weird to me at the time. But they put on the TV and the Columbine shootings were happening live. And it was really crazy to me that they put the TV on and we were seeing these kids, in that space of being, jumping out of windows, and the parents are crying. And so I'm holding my newborn for the first time, trying to breastfeed him for the first time. And I'm seeing all of this craziness happening. And it came to me for the first time in my life. I thought to myself, like, how many of those parents and kids wanted to be together, but couldn't be because the parents thought they had no choice. And my journey began. I think I was born a mother and born an advocate at the same time. And I thought to myself, my kids will always, always have the choice to attend school or not. That I felt that children forced to go to school against their will was violating human rights. And my journey started through that whole experience. And I never said to myself, my kids won't go to school because they'll get shot. Like, it was never like a fear-based decision. It was always a decision based on their choices and freedoms. So I began my journey thinking about what learning means. Like, what is learning? And I learned that forced learning was not learning, that forced learning was unjust and against their freedoms. And I said to myself that I would always respect my kids. And in the same way my kids learned to walk and talk without classes, without force, they learned to read and write, and they learned everything they needed on their, journey to growing up. And the side effect of respecting them has been like strangely profound. To me, it came really instinctual to respect my kids and their choices. But to most people, they thought it was crazy that I wasn't punishing my kids, that I wasn't forcing them to do workbook pages and all this curriculum. The fact that kids can learn without force is kind of radical, but it's really worked for my family, and it's worked for thousands and thousands of families all over the world. I never knew that I'd be an advocate. In fact, I'm really shy by nature, and I never thought I'd be speaking on this platform that I have. I've been on TV like a dozen times, on the Dr. Phil show, on Nightline, on Fox News, which was totally out of my comfort zone to even speak about this, but something propelled me to go forward and educate people about this life. Most recently, I've spoken in China, which was really intense because, it's communism and it's illegal to homeschool your kids there. I've spoken in India, Australia, all over the world about this life. And to me, this is like on the leading edge of new thought. But I think before schools came to be, which was only in the 1800s, this is how people lived most naturally. So it's really my passion to educate people about an alternative that is really normal to me, but to most people is really crazy. So this all starts with attachment parenting. If you haven't heard about attachment parenting, it's a more natural-based philosophy. My kids always had the choice of where to sleep. I've co-slept with all my kids. I breastfed them as long as they, needed to. And I carried them all the time until they were 2 years old, if they wanted to be in my arms. And everybody told me my kids would be dysfunctional. Everybody told me my kids would never leave the family bed or never stop breastfeeding, but that's a lie. If you've heard that, it's a total lie. They do when they're ready. So the basis of this philosophy is that you care about your kids' needs as much as your own. That your role as a parent is not to train them to take orders. In fact, your role is to meet their needs and to help them get what they want in life. I've never seen myself as my child's, teacher. I see myself as my child's learning facilitator. And even I don't have to know the answers. Like I don't have to know the answers to everything they ask, but I do need to know how to find the answers. And so it's helped me grow as a parent. It's a really intense role though, as far as my own healing, because I realized that everything that was done to me was wrong and abusive and controlling. And so it's a really, upheaval of your own childhood trauma on this path. But being their mother has been the greatest gift I could ever even give the world, because everything everybody told me would happen as a result of parenting this way is wrong. I was lied to from day one. And I have no idea how I trusted myself, despite, I never trusted myself in any other area. My whole life, I was insecure and shy. But for some reason, something guided me, and I listened to them, and I trusted my kids more than myself. And I've, grown to help educate other people about this life. So I've written 3 books about this. My first book was called Radical Unschooling. My second book was called Sexy Birth, which sounds really weird, but I'm a midwife. So I've grown to help women bring their babies into this world with under their own power. And my third book is called Raising Rebels, Parenting Advice from the Girl Your Parents Warned You About, which I'm sure many parents warned their kids about me. But yeah, so whatever questions you have, I'm happy to answer. Let's start. Is this really crazy to most people to hear?
Hi, Dayna, it's Mackenzie. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Mackenzie. How are you?
I'm so good. It's great to see you. Sorry, I'm not on video yet.
It's okay.
I will be shortly, but just wanted to pop in and say that, yeah, in 2017, I went to your workshop and it totally shifted my paradigm as far as unschooling and teaching and parenting goes. my background is in education, so it automatically helped me see things that I always felt in my heart were right, but obviously the system does not think so. Anyways, I had a very specific question. Well, two questions, and you can answer whichever one you feel like. But first of all, I became a mother in 2020, and I know there's several new mamas in this group. And what a wild year to become a parent. So I was wondering just what you would share with any new parents within this new paradigm that we are certainly in, for better or for worse. I see a ton of positives with it, and I think that it's actually driving people towards unschooling and all the beautiful things that it brings with attachment parenting and being with your children more. So that's my first question is any advice for new parents in 2020? And my second question would be more specific in regards to how did you teach your children to potty train? Because that's what is next on my list. And I'm done with diapers. I was really into studying elimination communication, but I just haven't started it yet. So anyways, I have an idea from a French friend that told me their regimen that was pretty strict because they're, I don't know, French. And anyways, I was just wondering what your strategy for that was. That's my specific question. And thanks for your time.
Okay, great. So potty training, I don't like that word because training feels so, like dog training. It's just potty learning, like whenever they decide to go on their own, which sounds maybe radical. Like I encourage my kids to use the toilet, but they always had the choice to. I didn't do rewards or gold stars or, reward them if they were going as an attempt to further that behavior. If I was proud of them, I authentically said it, but I didn't like intent of positive reinforcement is really important. So if your intent is to get more of the behavior you saw, it's kind of self-focused. If the intent is to authentically connect and say, how do you feel about that? Are you happy about going on the potty? And connecting with them over it, it's a whole different mindset. So my kids all use the potty at different times. I think girls train later or, learn how to use the potty later than boys. So my kids had the freedom to choose to go on the potty or not. I use cloth diapers, so it wasn't like an issue of buying diapers. I think that's like a big deal for people. Diapers are really expensive. Or we used, whatever they wanted to. But my kids learned, I think the boys were like around 4 and the girls were around the same age, a little older, like 4.5. So it was more about honoring when they were ready and understanding that the potty can be really scary. When the toilet flushes, it's pretty intense, for most kids. So I just really didn't worry about it. I knew that they would when they were ready, but we have a lot of pressure from society. I can still remember, to be honest with you, when I was 2 years old, my grandmother like locking the door of the bathroom and me being forced to go against my will. Like it's stuck in my mind. And I only did it so I could have freedom. At the basis of everything your kids learn, what they want more than anything is freedom. Freedom to choose, freedom to be themselves. And the thought that kids won't learn unless you force it is totally inaccurate. In fact, the damage that comes from force, you can get a kid to do whatever you want, but at what cost? And so it doesn't really have to be that big of a deal. What's the fear of most parents? I want to hear from those listening if their kids don't learn to use the potty. Do you think your kids will be on the potty like in diapers for till they're like 7, or like what are your thoughts?
Thanks so much for answering so far. I would say for me, it's just more of, this pressure from society, right? But also wanting to encourage just normal child behavior. I guess I never knew like what time frame is normal for kids to start transitioning out of diapers.
Right. Yeah, I think a natural potty training, it's funny, like forced potty training is around like 2 or 3. But in my experience, for 20 years working with parents, that's more around the age of 4, 4.5. So I think when like the natural progression for learning to use the toilet, it's different. The toilet's kind of scary and intense, and you flush it, and the kids. My son Devin, who's 21 now, we laugh about it now, but he used to think he'd be sucked down the potty, like down the toilet. And so I really honored that, and I said, well, if you don't want to go there, you don't have to. What would be? I don't have to flush it till you're gone. Working with them and asking them, what are you afraid of, or how can I make it better for you? I think the pressure to make kids grow up too fast is really damaging, because kids are born being dependent. They're born being dependent on you. And when we force independence too soon, it really warps the human condition. Kids become like dependent so much later, and they have all kinds of issues later in life if we force things too soon. When you honor their dependence and don't think it's something's broken because they're dependent on you, they become independent much sooner and much more in a whole way versus trying to please you. So when you don't have external motivation of like a gold star, a cookie, or whatever reward you're trying to give them, they're able to do it when they truly feel comfortable versus the need to please you, which, we don't want to condition kids to be in that space. We want them to have them find when they're truly ready for things. So, yeah, most kids don't go on their own till they're like 4 or 5. Is that crazy for people to hear?
Hey, I have a quick question. So
Sure.
we have, our daughters are 12 and 6. And what I noticed is that, like, I was wondering what your connection to social media was with your kids, because they're kind of vary in age. And like, I feel like, I don't know, like, how much to limit it, like, to give them the choice to expand. But I feel like maybe social media and the world in general is forcing them to grow up. I've just noticed my 12-year-old go from like here to here. Like, her innocence just vaporized as soon as she got on social media or YouTube, this and that. I feel like it's a really intense venue, the internet, and I just don't know how to go about that. Like, do you completely, like, because now I'm thinking of my 6-year-old, do I completely limit that world and just like hide her from it? But that's kind of like the new age. So like, should I let her do it on her own time, or how should I limit it? I mean, the parental controls, kids are so smart now. I mean, they can do whatever they want, really.
A great question. So it's important to first understand what control does to a human being. So when you control or limit something, kids have a warped relationship with whatever's being controlled. That's first important, an important thing to realize. We can't keep our kids from the real world. Like, this life of freedom is not about like sheltering kids. And, most of you here, I'm sure, are here because you want to hear an alternative. It's about navigating it with them. So, I've always been connected with my kids and helped them navigate all of that, and been by their side when they're exploring it. I think that's really important, and talked openly about it. So most kids don't necessarily want to use social media unless they understand what's going on and they have, you're with them. So what is your daughter wanting to do, like your 6-year-old?
So she wants to like do everything her 12-year-old sister does. So like, the 12-year-old went from like, a lot of her peers at a very young age had like smartphones, and they're like supercomputers. So like, when we were of that age, I'm like 30. So like, it was a process. There was like dial up, and everyone knew you were going to the computer. You were sitting at the computer. Our 12-year-old can just like blast through YouTube and then just start going down the rabbit hole and like, getting exposed to types of things and the type of people, different things that it's like hard to control. It can go from like 0 to 100. If she goes to bed with her phone, God knows in a couple hours she could like be doing anything. So the 6-year-old really wants to just like be able to like openly search things, and
her friends have the Facebook like kids messenger. So now with the pandemic, it's like that's the way the kids meet up and play, is through the computer. So she wants to do that, and it's just, we don't feel good about it, but like, otherwise she doesn't really have any interaction after school.
Yeah, and like, kids now, like, they'll be sitting in the same room. Like, I'll have my daughter and her friend, and like, they could interact like organically, but they interact with the phone even though they're like inches away from each other. And I don't know like how healthy that is, but I don't know.
Have you guys noticed that the kids, when they're doing this, speak in the third person now? because my kids, from looking at the videos when they're playing, and it's like they're narrating their lives.
Wow, that's
What I
interesting.
noticed with my kids from
Yeah.
all of these platforms.
So I know
I
it's like really scary. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I haven't noticed that so much with our children, but it's interesting that
I do notice
say that.
Cameron, our older one, like she like lives through her like her avatars and stuff, and like she's always like trying to like dress them like her and then dress like them, and she like kind of associates herself with like this like
Anime.
she's really into like like Japanese anime, but like instead of I'm like that's awesome, like would you want to like learn about Japanese, I'm really into history, I'm like would you like to learn about Japanese culture and cartooning, and she's like nah, it's really just like being a character and talking to other people on the internet as this character. And I don't know, I just feel like she wants to just be on the phone constantly and doesn't want to like, you know, I feel like she's missing a lot of her life. I'm like, get out, like get outside, or do you want to go carve some wood and, you know, do something like, you know, like with your hands, like something tangible. And she just always wants to be in like a virtual space, which is weird to me, but I don't know.
You know, so it was like before technology came to be and before radio, parents were told when comic books came out to limit their kids' use of comic books, that it was really damaging to their brains to read them. And that was like a well, you know, documented history of parenting. And so when radio came out, parents were told the same thing, like you can't let your kids listen to more than 30 minutes of radio because it'll be really damaging to them. And then TV came out and it was the same thing. So like TV and technology are so new in human history that the first, you know, impulse is to restrict kids because we don't know, you know, what's going to happen as a result of all of this with human evolution. But the truth is that the reality that we're in is that this is where we're at. You know, we're in the technological age, and how do we navigate this with our kids? The best thing you can do is not restrict it and be with them during this time as much as possible, because it's all new to us and they are so much more technologically advanced than we are. My kids teach me things all the time. I mean, even getting on this call, my daughter had to help me with some parts of it. So I don't think that we should be in a place of fear. And when our kids know they can come to us because they're not going to be punished for looking at certain things or being connected with certain things, they'll always be open with us. Now, my daughter, who's 16, will tell me when somebody sends her like a dick pic. You know, she'll come right down and be like, "Oh my God, look at this guy. He sent me this thing," and we've talked about these things. It's scary when you have young kids that what's available now. But the truth is, we really can't shelter our kids from this, because if we try, the worst thing we can do is limit and control it, because they'll go behind our backs, and that's when it's like really dangerous. You know, think of yourselves as teens. What did your parents tell you couldn't do? That's exactly what you wanted to do. And in that space of limiting and controlling and forbidding, we were really in dangerous situations. So I think we have to face it head on and talk to our kids about these things. Talk to them about safety. Talk to them about the fact that people will try to like get them to connect with them, and never to give out your information. And my kids always came to me when somebody would try to be getting this information from them. So as far as their social life right now, you know, I know with COVID, it's really kind of twisted and warped right now, because this is all they have is their social connection with other people. But I think we really need to trust them in this space. And as far as your daughter who's 6, you know, I know that's really a hard space to be, but does she believe you when you tell her things that are dangerous? Do you have the relationship where she believes you, or is she like, I think that the trust that's important on this path is essential. So when kids aren't, sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, just to echo on what you said. So like, correct, like she was to the point where she was like, yeah, no, I know, I understand. And like, we're like, you know, you just can't give out your information for X, Y, and Z. And we're just, you know, trying to keep you safe. But like Cameron, she was so innocent that she was like really, she just had faith in like people in general. So like multiple times our 12-year-old has given out her information. Like someone was like, yo, you're going to win this sweepstakes. And she would just like give her, and like, we had already been through the whole thing with her, like why you don't do this. And people have hacked her accounts because they're like, hey, if you give me your password to this account, I'll give you this. And then she gets locked out of all of her accounts. It's happened like multiple times. So she does like believe us, but I feel like a day spent on the computer. You're right. I kind of feel like the more open you are, because I do remember being in a similar space, but it wasn't like the internet. And I would just like, I'd find a way and like they'll find a way. And I did feel like I got myself in dangerous situations because there was like the undertone of trying to hide it. Therefore, I didn't have someone there to help me when I like was navigating like a tumultuous situation. But I just feel like the innocence got lost really quickly with our 12-year-old. And I'm just like worried about the 6-year-old. Like you said, like the dick pic thing, like back in like when we were younger, it's like, I wouldn't just walk up to someone and like, you know, take my pants off or something. So it's so easy for someone through this like screen to like expose somebody or to do something to somebody that they would normally like not do in a normal social situation. Yeah, it's like, it's really extreme.
Yeah. And I know what you mean about the innocence. You know, when my kids were younger, I could really guide them with what their, you know, influence was. But as they get older and they have new needs and they want to explore more, it can feel like you're losing that. But the truth is their innocence stays as long as you're connected with them. And we can't keep them from the reality of the world. And sometimes we have to choose the less risky thing. You know, it's not like our first choice as parents, but it's the less risky and the safer thing given our situation in our world right now. And so I know that them feeling open to talk to me about these things and giving them information is safer than forbidding it and saying you can't do this and taking their phones away, because that when they feel in that place where we're the wall between them and what they want to learn and grow and learn, you know, expand from, and they can't talk to us about it, that's when things get really dangerous. So it's hard at 12 and 13 when your kids really want to learn about whatever their instinct is driving them to learn about and connect with. But parenting is really hard in that way right now. You know, I know parents who have forbidden these things, and it's been really disastrous because if they don't feel they can come to you, they're in danger. And so I think being a partner with them and giving them information, and I know everyone's in a different place with technology. You know, it depends on who you are personally. Some families don't allow any technology because they don't use it themselves. But when you're in a position where you use it, the do as I say, not as I do mentality will just totally crush your relationship with them. And so if you're using it for whatever reason and educating them about the dangers with it, I think it's much safer. So I don't think that any kids really will do anything or see anything or connect with anything they're not ready for unless we forbid it. When we forbid it, they want freedom above all else. They want freedom to choose. Kids are born with that. Kids are born with a desire for freedom. And when we're telling them they don't know, you know, we know better than them and they can't do these things, it warps the relationship with whatever's being controlled, and they want freedom above all else, and they'll do things as a result of wanting that autonomy, wanting that freedom. And that's when you look back on your own experiences, that's what puts us in danger. So with freedom and connection, so know what they're doing. My kids were always in like a public area with me for the most part. Their computers were downstairs, even though like the house looked crowded, you know, having everyone's computers and laptops and everything downstairs with 4 kids. It was still safer. At least I could connect to them. I knew what they were doing. Yeah, so checking on her and seeing how she's doing without shaming her, I think is really important, without shaming your kids, because it's a confusing world to navigate now, and we're learning as they learn. So I don't know if that helps, but I wouldn't worry about your 6-year-old losing her innocence. You know, she's your baby, and if she knows she can come to you, it might feel like they're losing their innocence, but in fact, they're growing up.
Mhm.
And that's really
Yeah.
hard. It's hard. You know, losing their innocence is kind of like this catch-all umbrella for saying that they're growing up, and we don't want them to. We want them to stay so young and pure and innocent for so long. And the truth is they're going to grow up, and they're going to grow up really differently than we did. The best thing you can do to keep your kids safe is to allow them the freedom and to connect with them and talk about things and tell them without shaming them and without making them feel bad about what they've learned and discovered, that it's okay, that they can talk to you about it, and that things might make them uncomfortable, and help them like tune into their instinct. I always told my kids, when you feel that feeling in your stomach that something's not quite right, listen to it. Listen to it. Like, leave the situation, leave the call, leave whatever you're engaged in. So we were so silenced as kids ourselves. We had that instinct so much, but we were told that we didn't know better, and that the adults in our lives knew better than we did, and that we had to obey above all else. And that really silenced that voice. But your kids have that intact. You need to trust your kids more than your parents trusted you, more than adults trusted you, because if you were trusted, you would have made good choices. You would have. You knew what to do. You knew what was wrong. You knew what was bad. But because people never trusted you, it really warped who you were. So we're kind of always projecting based on who we were as kids. Our kids are evolved. Our kids know things we didn't, especially when we trust them. And so I think that's really important, that even though you didn't have that experience, that your kids have you who trust them. And their experience is going to be very different than what you would have done. So I know it's like new territory, but trust changes everything.
If I can interject for a second.
Sure.
First off, I really like everything you're saying so far. And it actually, like, full disclosure, I was on like AOL or Prodigy back in like 94 when I was like 6 years old. So like I was probably on the earlier end of that cusp. And like now, because of that, I'm a software engineer and do some pretty complex stuff because I've been allowed to play with it the whole time. And I irreparably destroyed a bunch of my parents' computers on the way there, but that's besides the point. But the way you described it, I didn't even think about it, really links up with, I feel like, between like kids today and parents with like trepidation over using just accessing the internet, basically. Like, it's very similar to drugs, actually, in like my own experience with my parents, where like, just as a really short story, like my little brother back in high school would like sneak out and drive around with his buddies smoking pot or whatever in their car because they couldn't tell their parents that that's what they did. One day they get pulled over, cop finds us, like the other kid's an idiot, basically. It's just like, if there's anything in there, it's not mine. It's like, okay. And the cop's even like, dude, come on, why'd you have to say that? So anyway, my parents get the phone call, pick my little brother up at the police station, and literally on the drive home, my parents are teaching my little brother. My dad's like, hey, I wish I knew that I should have taught you how to roll a joint, because you at least flick that out the window. And basically from then on, our conversation completely changed, because we were able to be open about the fact that, okay, you smoke pot. And my parents were like, hey, don't go driving around doing stupid stuff. Just like hang out here, be safe. Like that's, and it was like literally safer from then on. Especially when people started drinking and stuff like that. Like, I'd rather you do it. My parents would say, I'd rather you do it in our house than potentially be just driving around or going hiding and potentially getting yourself killed drinking and driving or whatever. So I think the safety aspect is, you're totally right in terms of having that extra bit of trust, and just open communication completely changed like at least my brother and my relationship with my parents. I think that's a similar kind of vibe there.
Yeah, great points. I mean, I think that anything we forbid makes something like we put a lot of energy into like this being taboo and something they shouldn't do. And it makes it really desirable, because we as humans want to expand and learn. No matter what our parents say, we have to experience it ourselves. So what the first couple shared, I'm sorry, I don't remember your names. The fact that you were with your child during all of that was awesome. You know, my son Orion, who's 13 now, he just turned 13. You know, there was a time where he was on, I think it was like, I don't know what game it was, but he was trading weapons and buying, you know, new things for the game. And some kids conned him out of these weapons that took him months and months to earn. And it crushed me when he came to me crying like they stole them from him. And it was a really, really hard lesson for him to learn, not to trust people. But we can't just tell our kids not to trust people. They have to sometimes experience it themselves. And when they're by our side, the damage doesn't happen. Because imagine like if you forbid something and kids got scammed out of something or conned into something and they couldn't come to you with that. They'd never really learned the lesson. So my kids have always been able to come to me with this, and it killed it. I was crying with him, you know, like I knew how long it took him to earn these weapons or whatever he did. I think it was Fortnite. And but he never ever trusted people again online. After, when he would come to me saying, oh, these guys, you know, tried to get me to do this, and I learned from this experience. And so we can't keep the world and all of the bad people from them necessarily, you know, but we can be there for them in this space to help them learn on their own. We don't want to condition kids to just believe what we say. I know that might sound weird, but we don't. Because if we condition kids to just believe what we say with no question, what does that create as adults? To not question authority. We don't want that. We want them to learn on their own, to gain these skills before they're adults, to be able to know that they have that instinct. They will learn from their mistakes and not just trust people or trust authority based on what they're told to do. So it takes a lot of courage to step into the space, and it's really foreign to most of us because we have like one foot in each paradigm. We have one foot in like the authoritarian paradigm and how we were raised, and then we have one foot in something more that we want, you know, more for our kids. And we're living this life of freedom and wanting to give them more understanding and respect, but it's hard for us. So this is why I do these talks, because I want to help parents understand that yes, this is not the easy way. We can forbid and give rules, but rules are a replacement for being there. Rules do not work. They are a replacement for being present with our kids and helping them navigate the hard lessons that they will learn on their own. So, yeah. What other questions are coming up?
Hi, Dayna. Thanks.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. This is Patrick. And
Hi.
between us, we have 3 kids. We have 2 full-time and 1 that comes to visit us part-time. And so my daughter's 12 and Patrick's son is 9, and we homeschool both of them. We have for the last couple of years. And I know unschooling is a departure from homeschool. And I'm just wondering, like, what did it look like for you, or what does it look like for you? Because from what I understand, it's not curriculum based. And I would just like to hear what that looked like, and structure. Was there no structure? Just what is it like? What was it like?
Okay. So unschooling is a method of homeschooling, but it's stepping away from the whole idea that kids need to learn certain things at certain ages and that they have to follow a state curriculum. What most people do when they homeschool is they buy a curriculum and do what schools do at home. They basically force their kids to do certain things at a certain time. So what unschooling philosophy is not just an educational philosophy, it's a whole life philosophy. And it's trust in your kids to learn what they need to learn based on what they love doing and what they're interested in as an extension of who they are. So a typical day in our life might look like what most people do on weekends. So what do you do with your kids when you're free on a weekend, for example? You pursue your passions, you have fun, you explore things, you do projects or go on trips. Our life is like that all the time. So my kids have never done any kind of formal schoolwork, which is really, I know, radical and really extreme. But my kids learned to read and write, and they learned every single thing they needed to learn, like most kids in school learn, at their own time in their own way. So reading, writing, and math are all tools to help us get more of what we want in life. And the only thing that stands in the way of reading, writing, and math and all the other things that we're forced to learn, the only thing that gets in the way of that is forced learning. And so forced learning can be gentle looking. It can be coercion. You don't have to punish your kids or threaten them for it to be in the category of forced learning. So forced learning is not learning. When you're forcing somebody to learn something or coercing them or giving rewards or threats, people never really learn what we think they do. They learn to take orders. That's the above all message. And so when my kids had an internal motivation to learn something, to help them get further with whatever they were interested in. They would learn it really easily. And I know it's kind of a hard concept to grasp, but you know, I've never ever lived in a space where I feel like I need to force my kids to do things against their will. So my son Devin learned to read and write when he was 9. So let me just start by saying that the idea of like kids having to learn at 5 or 6 to read is completely false. And when you research the history of schooling and why that is, you learn that the only reason kids were forced to learn to read by age 6 was because the curriculum after 2nd grade was all in the written word, and it would be impossible for the teacher to cater to everybody. So the needs of the school came before the needs of the learner. Now, natural reading and writing is anywhere between the age of like 5 and like 14. Crazy, I know, but some kids don't learn these things until their brains are ready later in life. But they're not any further behind than kids who have been taught in school, ever. My son Devin learned to read fluently at age 9. Most people would think that the first book he would have to read are like, you know, Cat in the Hat books or something at that age group. But the first book my son ever read was the Harry Potter series. My daughter Tiffany didn't learn to read. She's autistic, and she didn't learn to read fluent, like really well, until she was 11. And the very first book she ever read at age 11 was a 300-page autobiography of the band One Direction. Now, this is like at a 15-year-old level. She went from, you know, 0 to that space because her brain was ready to learn, and she was never forced. My daughter Ivy learned to read when she was about 10. And the first book she ever read might shock you, would really shock most people. And I'll tell you, it's hard to be honest about this, but I will, just for the sake of learning. The first book she ever read in her life was Marilyn Manson's autobiography, The Long, Hard Road Out of Hell. But she did come to me and say, I don't want to read anything sexual, so can you read this first and let me know what pages that's on, because I'm not into that. So I would tell her, you know, I'd kind of mark the book. And my son Orion learned to read when he was 8. He was the youngest, and he learned to read through gaming. He wanted to chat with his friends. So in the meantime, you know, during all that time, I'm so grateful that they were able to pursue what they loved and could expand on their interests. Before that time, they didn't have all that wasted busy work. Everybody warned me that if you don't force this at age 6, they're never going to learn. And it was completely a lie. It was never true. So a typical day in our life looks different in our family than it would in yours, based on who my kids are and what they love to do. My son Devin's 21 now, and he's in Ohio, and he has his own computer business. He makes games. He's a gamer. Well, he would hate that I said that, actually. He always corrects me. He says I'm a programmer. So he has his own business programming. My daughter Tiffany, who's 19 now, she's a influencer and a model by profession, which took me a long time to get over that whole scene, because in the beginning, I really didn't like that she was in that. You know, I had to get over my own beliefs surrounding what that modeling scene would be like. But she asked me to manage her career, and I make sure everyone's respectful to her. But she really loved to do that. And she makes really good money doing it. And it's very fulfilling to her. My daughter Ivy, last year when she was 15, said, Mom, I want to be a veterinarian. I'm going to get into college. Now, this is a child with no formal education, nothing. And I said, okay, let's research what we have to do. And she passed. She wanted a high school diploma. She took like a test, and she had more knowledge than most kids her age. She's now in college and has been for a year, studying to be a vet. And my son Orion is always in the space of, he's my baby. So he loves doing what I'm doing, but he's cooking and gaming and doing other things. But all of my kids, I feel, are successful in their own right. It might not look like what most people want their kids to do, but my belief is that to be successful in life, we have to be happy. And we can make money off whatever we love doing. And our culture trained us to believe that if we jump through these hoops and we're successful, then we can be happy. And look at all the miserable people in the world right now. So we're kind of flipping the script and saying, you know, I've always said to my kids, you can make money off whatever you love doing. And how many years has it taken us to get to this point? Most of us, years and years of healing and growing, and to not be in that space, to just be in a job where we take orders. So my kids have always had their own businesses since day one. Literally, my son Devin, when he was 4, had his own chocolate business. When he was 10, he said he wanted to learn to be a blacksmith. And so I found him a mentor. And I found him a lot of different resources based on what he wanted to do. And he had an Etsy store by age 13 where he was making knives and swords to sell. Anyway, I could go on and on. I don't mean to use like my kids' success, I guess, as a means to promote this life, because it's not about that for me. It's about their happiness and fulfillment. And so a typical day, we're just doing whatever we want, to be honest with you. Whatever we want, all day, every day. We have ultimate freedom. But most people don't trust kids. And they think if kids were left to their own devices, that they would just do nothing all day. And I think when kids are really controlled, it might look like that because kids just want their freedom. But I found my life to be really unique in that way. But I don't think my kids are special, any more special than your kids. My kids aren't geniuses or like anything like that. They just have freedom. And in that space, they've been able to have mastery. They have mastery in what they want to do in their lives. And if they're happy, that's my main goal. It's not about success. I just want them to be happy and whole. So that's a really long answer. I know.
It's helpful to hear just your personal experience. So thank you for sharing your family with us and important aspect of your children in your life. That's super helpful and inspiring.
I'm so glad.
Schooling by accident. So,
a lot of people come to it like that. They come to it by accident. Yeah.
Yeah, especially Patrick's son. So it makes me, and I we second guess, like, should he be? Yeah. So thank you.
He's getting to the point too. He was in Waldorf for a few years, and because he wasn't vaccinated in New York State, we took him totally out of school last year, and have been trying to work at different types of homeschooling with him. And he's lately saying he wants to go to regular school, and this is where it becomes like that's his desire. That's what he's saying. But then at the same point, I'm seeing like just stepping into the system's way of indoctrinating you. So it's challenging to know. Is this a point to be kind of firm and like, no, we're going to stick to doing this? Or is it like, because he doesn't, like you said, like to trust your intuition, but he doesn't really know in reference to this. Like he's 9. He doesn't really know what he's asking for. So I go back and forth a lot. And of course, he hasn't even been able to be in school as a result of all the COVID restrictions. So we've gone back and forth just thinking about that, like what, because it is coming from him theoretically, but, so.
Well, I think a child that chooses school is a totally different experience than a child forced in school.
Right. That's right.
I think schools should be used as like a resource and should be, something that like a library, that if a child wants to go in that system, then they don't necessarily suffer the damaging side effects of being forced. Right. They enter it like willingly. They know the rules. They know the punishments. They know everything that goes into that. And if they choose that, that's very, very different than being forced. Being forced is where all the damage comes. So unschooling isn't about not using school. It's about the basis of this whole philosophy is children's rights and freedom to choose. If we would have had that, life would have been very different for most of us. It took us so many years to get to the point that we're all at, to be able to have this self-ownership and autonomy to choose these things in our life. So most kids would not choose school. In fact, I know a lot of parents whose kids want to try it, and they do, and most do not choose to stay, because the disrespect that comes as a side effect of that is like, they're like, what the hell is, it's really demeaning. The whole system is demeaning. And so if your son knows that anytime, and talk to him about it, like, just so you know, when you go there, it's really weird. You have to ask permission for this, and they treat you like a dog, basically. And if anytime you want to leave, you can come home. But I think the socialization, I think, is like a big question for most parents.
That's really the main, that's the crux of it for me. Like.
Yeah. And so I think, so kids in school, age segregation is like a really big deal that most parents don't think about. So age segregation is something that only exists in school, and it's very unnatural, that we're not meant to be around our age mates. Imagine if before I scheduled this, I said to Pat, like, I only want 40-year-olds. Like, I only want people in their 40s. That's it. I'm only comfortable with that. That'd be so weird. We don't care how old we are. That kids don't really have that natural inclination to only be associated with kids of the same age. But age segregation is really damaging because kids in school, they can't associate with kids in a grade older than them, or the kids will be made fun of, or kids younger than them they can't really hang out with because they'll be made fun of and teased. And so it really limits their social network. Actually, age segregation is like extremely limiting and really damaging. So when human beings connect based on their interests and what they love doing versus the fact that they're the same age, it really expands so much. My kids have friends of all ages. They always have. I always tell a story about my son, Devin, when he was 5. He was really good friends with this like 80-year-old woman down the street. It was so cute, like he'd go down to see her and she taught him how to knit. He had no sense of the fact that age has anything to do with who you hang out with. So, there's so much damage that comes as a side effect of the institution, not just the, indoctrination, but the age segregation is a big deal. So I think if you give your son freedom to choose, that will change his whole perspective probably on everything, and let him know, be open with him, be honest with him, be authentic. I think that's the really important aspect of this life, is being honest about our feelings about everything in life. Letting him know, like, you can go, just so you know that this is how it is. And if anything feels wrong to you, you can leave anytime. I know my kids have a much big social circle based on what they love doing. But the thing I love most is that every child has the freedom to choose who they are socially. Now, my son Devin was like a really happy being alone. Like he had a couple really good friends. He had one really best friend, and they were such a great pair. They were friends. They're still friends from age 5 until now. He was best man at his wedding, and I don't think that we need the social circle that we're told that we do in our culture. My daughter Tiffany, she loved being around a lot of people, so I really had to facilitate that for her because she loved a lot of friends. So we joined dance class, different things she wanted to do to bring people into her life. And so we're able to personally cater to each child's social needs. Think about the friends you have who are in school, who are like total hermits now. Like, it's not like being around a lot of people conditions you to be like that your whole life. Some people just are, loners, and there's nothing wrong with that. So facilitating your child's needs and learning and social needs are really important. You're welcome. Okay.
Hey, Dayna.
Hi.
I would like to ask several questions, actually. My first one would be about technology. So we had several parents who were describing multiple situations, how it's being when the kids are at devices. And I have a 5-year-old daughter. She just turned 5. And I'm basically 24/7 on my computer. I'm just working. When I'm not at when I'm at home, I'm just doing crypto stuff and trying to provide extra, because the money that I get from my normal work is not really doing us much good here. So I'm trying to squeeze as much time as I can into my online work, besides, of course, having time for my family. And my daughter is picking up on that a lot. Of course, she wants to spend time with me, and then she comes to me and tries to share this time that I have on my computer, and like trying to seeing what I'm doing there and taking over my computer, taking my hand away from my mouse, trying to take over the entire work that I'm doing here. And at once, I don't really want her to be on a device in general, because me and my wife, we think that each time she spends more than half an hour on a smartphone, for example. She's not allowed to use a smartphone usually. Her behavior changes immediately, and she becomes hyperactive and even aggressive if we take it away from her. And we can see that also when she's with her grandmother, who allows her to be on a tablet. And then the other side is that I'm having trouble explaining to her how there is this line between me being at home, spending time with her, playing with her, just having our private time, and then there's this time where I'm being at home, but also just needing to work, and I can't just lock myself in or something like that. I don't want to do that, and it's really tricky for me. And she even wants to spend more time now with me because of this than with her mother. And her mother has more time. She's staying at home and it's basically 24/7 time to spend with her. And obviously she's now yearning for this time that I can't always give to her, but I really want to. So I'm struggling myself just to find this balance in between. So one is my question: what do you suggest to me how I should handle this? And then the other question is, what do you think about how technology does to young brains, especially now not teenagers but pre-teens?
Great questions. I wish I had more time with you guys. I so do. I'd love to come back in a couple of weeks whenever there's a free time, because I feel like we barely touched the top of the iceberg of all this. But so the behavior that you're talking about, I have to just be upfront and say it's the control and limiting that is causing the behavior, not the technology. Now that might be shocking to hear, but it's the truth. That when parents take something away, whatever they're fearing or whatever they're limiting, we blame our kids' behavior on that instead of understanding that it's the control and taking it away that is causing like this negative reaction. And so we live in this space of not really facing that, because we see it and we almost punish them for what their desire is by saying, look at your behavior, look at how you're acting after being on this, when in fact they're just wanting freedom, and they don't have the skills to really articulate the fact that, no, you're taking it away from me. I was in the middle of something, or I wasn't done this. It takes a long time to work through a game or to work through a video, and it's the control and limiting that causes the negative behavior, not the game itself. From my experience, I've been working with parents for 20 years, and this is really common. The same thing happens with foods. Like, say you give your kids more freedom with foods, and they're choosing something that you're nervous about or have limits on, and they eat it. And then you instantly blame what's ever being controlled versus the fact that it's the control and the limiting and your interaction that's causing the negative behavior. So, I mean, I feel like with that connection and freedom, it doesn't cause it. It's how we're interacting with our kids that causes this behavior. Because kids, their needs, we don't really focus on their needs. The focus on behavior and how they're being and how they're interacting with you is the focus. But what was she doing at the time where you took it away? Or we need to sink down into the space to realize that our kids are people too. And most of the time, if we interacted with our partners in the way we interacted with our kids, they wouldn't stay with us. They would be like, what do you, that's, so I like to put people in the position that kids, even though they're little young kids, that they have feelings and needs. And when you focus on the needs under the behavior changes. So I don't know your situation, only hearing a tiny bit. Like, I can't speak on all of it, obviously, in such a short amount of time. But I feel like with freedom and connection, that kids will find balance with all of these things. When we make them taboo, they overuse it. And also, kids see whatever they love and they're interested in as an extension of themselves. And when we have issues with something, whether it's what they're watching or what they're doing or what they're interested in as bad or junk or something that needs to be limited, they really can't separate themselves from what they love. And so they internalize it so much, and they feel something's wrong with them because dad or mom doesn't like what we're interested in, and something's wrong with me. I must be bad. Like, what's wrong with the fact that I love this thing and they're telling me, no, you can't have any more of that, it's bad for you. But yet they're drawn to it. So the negative side effect of control and limiting things is it's like the self-fulfilled prophecy. And then we think that we're right. You know, we think we reinforce this cycle of blaming technology or blaming certain things in their lives that they're drawn to as them being bad or making bad choices. And much of it is based on the authoritarian paradigm and the side effects of that. So I hope that makes sense. It's hard. I have to go. I'm so sorry, guys. I so want to stay on, but I have a group coaching, unschooling group coaching I do every Thursday night at 7, and people are entering that room. So I think we need like 3 hours next time. I do.
Thank you so much for coming, Dayna.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And guys, I'm sorry if anybody didn't have a chance to ask a question, please message me. Pat will give you the information to get a hold of me. And I'm happy to answer anything that you have questions about that came up. I know this is like a really big shift and it might seem really radical, but if you're here, you're interested in something different. If you've come here tonight to listen, you want alternatives. And if something I've shared wasn't really attainable to you, I can help you get there. I can help you with tools and ideas and how to bridge this space. So, Carmen, hi.
Hi, Dayna. I just wanted to say thanks. This was awesome. I came in a little late, but everything was so helpful, especially that technology question. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Well, so nice to have everyone here tonight. Please let me know if I can help you in any way. You can find me on daynamartin.com or, find me through Pat. And let's do this again, like in 3 weeks or whenever there's space. Okay.
Let's do it. Thanks so much for coming.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dayna.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Did everybody enjoy that?
Great stuff.
It was awesome.
We're going to do it again. Definitely. We had a pretty good turnout. We had about 35, 40 people at one point.
Awesome stuff.
That was really
now,
great.
this is where we can talk about whatever we would like. It's nice to see some familiar faces.
I just want to follow up. Actually, I didn't have the chance to tell this to Dayna now, but maybe you can forward her what I'm going to say now. So there's this author from California. He's called David Warner Matheson. I'm holding up his book here. So this is one of many books that he wrote. This is called The Ancient Worldwide System. It's about mythology. He used to be in the US military and he taught at West Point, the cadets, in mythology actually. And the actual book that I wanted to mention from him is called Myths and Trauma. And in this book, he talks about his decade-long research about how mythology and religion is all over the world, painting a story of star myths, how the constellations in the sky teach a story of what he thinks is about our trauma of each and every single individual of the human race. And it ties in very neatly with what Dayna was talking about, how every time that we are being confronted with authority, whether it's our parents or in school or friends, family, whatever, and something happens, it's creating trauma. And trauma is a really harsh word. Most people connect it maybe to something really drastic, but it can be small things. Yeah, if someone is saying, no, you can't do that, this, you can't do that, and you're getting frustrated, and then you change your behavior out of that. And through this behavior change, you are disconnecting from your true self. Every time this is happening, you disconnect a little bit more. And eventually you grow up and you become this person, this ego that you identify with. So I'm this person, this is my name, this is my personality, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And it's not actually who you truly have been the moment you've been born into this world with the true potential that you have been given. And Matheson thinks that the myths and the religions, they teach us to heal that trauma. And the moment we start going on that path of healing that trauma, we tap into universal wisdom. We tap into the knowledge that is everywhere, like whatever you want to call it, the Akashic Chronicles, if you will. So every information that has ever been thought and acted upon since the creation of mankind. And we are being able to download information, not necessarily consciously, but we get it one way or another. And that allows us to create what in the esoteric traditions being called mind over matter. So we are creating our reality with our thoughts. And we don't even have to entirely heal ourselves. So it's not that you have to heal all the trauma from your childhood to become this person that is able to tap into this knowledge that is all encircling us, but actually just the mere decision of trying to become a better person is already enabling us to do so. And it's really interesting. I just wanted to drop that, and I will put a link to Amazon to this book into the chat here, because I really think it has helped me a lot to connect it to what happened in my life and realize that I do really see a certain truth in what he's talking about and that. And I found really interesting what Dayna was saying in that regard, because it's what I believe too, and it's very difficult to make that your own reality. Even though I know these things and I learned about this and I try to live up on that, it's on my day-to-day life with my family and my daughter. I'm not always able to realize these things and do this. So just listening to Dayna now is really helpful and self-reflecting, I think. And I think a lot of you guys who are listening now have a similar feeling about this. Just wanted to let you know.
Just got a message from Dayna, and she's actually going to jump back on for a minute. So she'll be here shortly. Feel free to keep the discussion going. I'll let her know that I told everyone.
Hey, what's up, Pat?
Hey, what's up, Sal?
I was well, listening to her, I was thinking of a lot of stuff, but like I wanted to kind of free the floor up a little bit. But like with our daughters, we ended up putting we didn't have like such a radical, like she says, philosophy on things, but like we do see it that way. It's just that it was like society didn't give us like really the space to do that. Like we started with like, well, it's not like Waldorf.
So it's like nature-based learning.
So the kids were like outside. They were just like staring at a book. They were like asked what they liked, and then like,
kind of like free schooling.
Yeah, it's like a free schooling. They were like learning like how to like take apart a washing machine. She was like 5 or 6 in school, and they were just straight up just taking down a washing machine, just letting them explore like tactile things and just like, just seeing what they were interested in. And we started that road because like we weren't vaccinating, so like normal schools really like were like looking for our paperwork and the kids' records, and we kind of wanted to like swerve that. So we started with this, and the girls loved it, and I feel like it made Cameron really, really bright, like really herself. That's why like when she went back to public school, her choice, she wanted to socialize with more people, have a larger network, and this school was kind of small. So I kind of watched her lose herself a little bit and like turn into a lot of her peers. And we would homeschool on and off. We did like how many years? A couple of years homeschooling.
2 years homeschooling.
Yeah, she always like went back to school on her own free will. But I just feel like I see less of her when she's in the system and more of what her teachers want her to be and what her friends think she should be and what like YouTube says she should be.
Like
And
I look forward to these breaks that we have in school, like next week, them having a week off, because I feel like we reconnect with them again. And then once they go back to school, I feel like we lose some, not everything, not like it doesn't go out the window, but I just feel like part of them, we just lose that connection. So it's nice to have like a week to regroup. So yeah. I don't know. I'm sorry I cut you off.
yeah, no, I agree. I feel like it's so regimented. Like I like like when I was a kid, like my mom like worked at the school and she was just like, you know, I mean, I enjoyed it. But like, I feel like what she was saying makes a lot of sense because my parents would limit a lot of things. They were like, you know, they didn't want me to hang out with this kid or go to this party or do this thing or drive with people that I shouldn't or go fast in a car. And I like had to check everything off the list I was told not to do. I like did it tenfold. And I don't
Same
think
here.
there was,
Same here.
yeah,
Love you, Mom. But I did exactly what you told me not to do.
yes, it was bad. It was like really bad. I mean, it was to the point where I was just trying to rebel. Like just totally, the whole basis was rebellion. And I feel like if I could have talked more with my parents, I don't know. I just feel like I wouldn't have been in such dangerous situations like that car accident with your brother and Ryan.
Mhm.
That specifically happened because I was so scared of being out past curfew and telling my parents where I was and what I was doing that I caught the first ride I could. And it was like, I could have totally been like, yo, Dad, I'm drunk, I'm high, I'm like very far away from home. I'm going to be not home till 2 a.m. Could you come get me? I'm out here. I was so scared to do that. We just jumped in the first car that appeared. You were right there. And, you know, chaos ensued. I mean, we could have all been dead. And I really feel like that was just like not being able to openly and friendly communicate with my parents. I was just like hiding a part of myself.
Hey guys, I'm back.
Great to have you back.
Thank you. Luckily, my other call was they were flexible because I feel like we weren't really done here. So yeah, who else is here? Did everybody leave, or how many people are here still?
It's like a bunch.
Yeah,
There's a-
still,
Good.
still 25 people.
Okay,
I
great,
can
great.
text
Let's
Carmen and
continue.
tell him to hop back on because I know he did have a question. And he's
Okay,
also
great.
he's expecting shortly. So
I know, it's so exciting.
cool. I'll text him.
Okay.
Yeah, in the meantime, I was just talking about this book that I read called Myth and Trauma, about how the myths and religions around the world supposedly are connecting to a greater star myth constellation story that teaches about how we are all being fed with trauma through our life, through authority from outside, family, friends, whatever. And when we heal ourselves, when we start this healing process, we don't even have to entirely heal ourselves. Just when we begin the realization of we need to heal ourselves from this programming that that happened in our life, then we are being able to tap into a higher knowledge that leads us back to our true self. What do you think about that?
Well, I think parenting this way enables our kids not to go through what we did, for one. You know, all the healing that we have to go through with our past trauma, the hopes with parenting in a more peaceful way enables our kids to not have to go through what we've had to go through our whole adult lives, healing from our childhood. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
So I'm living in Germany, and there is no such thing as homeschooling here. That's totally against the law.
People are doing it
And
though. The translation of my book in German is the biggest selling book out of all my out of all my books. So there's a huge movement in Germany on schooling right now.
yeah, I believe that. I mean,
You make
Waldorf
something forbidden.
schools. Yeah, Waldorf
Sorry.
schools are huge in Germany, and the whole. I mean, Rudolf Steiner himself was a German, and my daughter's going to Waldorf kindergarten, and yeah, she loves it. But I mean, kindergarten is a different story than the actual school, and we're planning to put her into a Waldorf school, which of course is a great alternative to the old Prussian system. I mean, if you're not familiar with that, but the Prussians actually invented the school system that is now being used all over the world. So it's also coming from Germany. So we're all learning the German system basically. And I try to avoid that for my daughter because I have suffered greatly from school.
Yeah.
I mean, I still had nightmares of still going to school a decade after I finished school. And these nightmares were all about like me still going to school, although I'm already 30 and beyond. And yeah, I don't want my daughter to share the same fate. So of course, Waldorf is an alternative, but it's still not fully under my control. You know what I mean? So what do you suggest how I should handle that?
A lot of people come to this life through the Waldorf filter, especially now. It's funny. Like I gave a talk maybe 10 years ago at a Waldorf school, and people were pretty receptive of it. But when it came to technology or anything like that, people were really resistant to it because they were scared. Rudolf Steiner did great work, and I really admire him. However, his philosophy came to be way before the technological age. So I don't know how he'd face and how he'd handle how things are done now. So Waldorf school is definitely like a step away from the more public school mentality, but it's still within the authoritarian paradigm. We're talking about like a whole paradigm shift. And even though Waldorf curriculum is different, it's still within the same framework of the authoritarian paradigm that we know better than our kids to learn certain things at a certain time. Now, Waldorf school, when I first walked into a Waldorf school, my son, Devin, my firstborn, was 18 months old. I was so in love. There was a tree growing out in the middle of it, and it was gorgeous. And all the wooden toys and everything felt really true to my nature because I was really naturally minded. But once we were in there, it kind of shifted because the control surrounding what my kids were drawn to and what they believed was okay felt really controlling. In fact, parents are told in some Waldorf schools that their kids shouldn't use technology. Parents sign contracts over here anyway. I don't know what it's like there, but I've worked with a lot of Waldorf parents who are told that they have to live in a certain way that felt out of alignment with them. So I think Waldorf is a great step in this direction, but it's still controlled. And what I'm promoting is children's choice and away from control altogether. So Waldorf is great, and Montessori is great. There's a lot of like philosophies, educational philosophies that are really great, but it really doesn't matter to me. Like what comes down to it is my kids' choice and where they're comfortable and how they want to learn. So it's really like throwing away the whole paradigm of like us thinking we know better. So you make something forbidden and people want it. So I've been asked to speak in Germany, but I've been also warned not to go there because I'll be arrested. I don't know if that's true. I wasn't arrested in China, so Germany might be a good, might not resist
I can guarantee you, well, maybe not guarantee you, but Germany is as much as a free country as United States. In many regards, I would even consider it more free, even though people are a little bit more blinded in many ways, at least a certain degree of the population. But
yeah,
you are free to say whatever you want. And if you come here to speak, you will be greeted with open arms for sure.
Okay, maybe I should go then. But to me, it has to do with whether your kids want to be there or not. If your child loves to be there, then they can get a lot out of any philosophy. But if it comes down to them not wanting to go, I would never ever support an institution or a philosophy over my kids. You know, when I have the agenda of my kids first, it changes everything. So I give my kids like a whole world to learn and grow from, and they choose based on what what I can give them. And so I don't think anything's inherently wrong with these places if your kid wants to be there, but the institution is still dogmatic, quite frankly. You know, it is like Waldorf is really dogmatic, and really it's it can be scary to some parents because the conditioning that happens with the fear-based philosophy, if anything's motivating you through fear, it's kind of not the direction we want to go. And if parents are being feared by propaganda against technology, against our modern culture, it can be really confusing for us because we really want to do what's best, and we're turning to something alternative as experts versus our kids and ourselves. So that's my issue with Waldorf, is the dogma associated with it. I don't know what it's like in Germany. I know what Waldorf is like here. It's pretty intense.
No, I think it's pretty much the same. I mean, the fundamentals of Waldorf are probably everywhere in the world the same. And from what I'm not an expert in Waldorf whatsoever. My wife, she's a doula.
Oh,
I don't know
great.
if you know that term.
I'm a
Something
doula
like
as
a
well.
midwife.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
And she wants to become a Waldorf teacher. And that was actually my first confrontation with Waldorf schools and Rudolf Steiner in the first place. And we went to a seminar, and it was exactly like you described. They had immediately certain guidelines and rules, and talked about what they don't want the parents to do at home. They don't want, and the same with the kindergarten as well. From my daughter, they tell us they don't want them to be on the phone or on computer and stuff like that. And we have our own restrictions regarding that already, but nevertheless, we already feel pressured by the kindergarten that we should do this or shouldn't do that. And yeah, I don't feel 100% comfortable with that.
I think anytime you're pressured to be anyway because of a different philosophy, like I think a lot of people come to Waldorf because they don't want to be in the current system, and they think Waldorf is the answer. And anytime anyone's telling you that something that your child is drawn to is wrong, it kind of creates an environment for dishonesty. I'm working with a client right now whose child was in Waldorf for a long time, like years. And she wouldn't let her son use technology because she didn't want to get in trouble. Waldorf school creates the warping of the human condition in our current state of where we're at right now. And I really warn parents against going in any direction that feels like if anytime you're feeling pressure to be something other than you're not as a family, you should really rethink it. Because, it pulls you out of alignment with your own truth. And I don't think technology is inherently bad. In fact, Rudolf Steiner wasn't alive now. Like we can't base a philosophy based on this man who wasn't even alive during this time. So it's impossible, just like the Bible, basing like your life on biblical philosophies is not at all applicable to now. You have to really rethink it. And, when my client was having her child be part of Waldorf school, she would tell him, don't tell your friends in school that you watched the show, or don't tell, you can't wear this because it goes against their philosophy. Anytime you're asking your kids to lie or, become out of alignment with anything that they're drawn to is damaging. Yeah, I could go on and on about Waldorf school, but I know we have a lot of people with questions, so.
I have a quick question
Sure.
about discipline.
I have a good question, but I hope my phone doesn't die.
You can go first, Carmen.
All right. So, what is the solution for children who like to overstep physical boundaries? Because obviously, a lot of people aren't exactly down with, teaching them in that same capacity, like, in like retaliating against them. But there's also children like I know like 3 and 4-year-olds who can't even like understand when their mom's trying to tell them that what they're doing is wrong, and they're just kind of caught up in like the frenzy of the moment as they sort of like take advantage of their siblings or like pets or even like the parents. What is some of the ways you work around that with children who display that kind of behavior?
Can you give me like a real life example, Carmen, that you've been in recently? It's
All
really
right,
helpful to
so-
like hear like a real life example.
All right, so I call it frenzy mode when our 3.5-year-old starts kind of like, she gets real excited, and after she gets excited, there's like no calming her down. Like she's just like throwing stuff, whether she's like trying to make a mess on the floor or like trying to throw stuff at her mom.
Did we lose them?
His phone might not have been-
Possibly. I'm going to tell him to keep his video off so his bandwidth is stronger.
Okay.
I have
Well, that was actually a good question.
I have a question on how you're dealing with so I have 2 children that are 5 and 7, and just their mental health right now and their hyper awareness of everything going on with COVID and mask wearing and the shame of COVID right now. How can we help like bring it down to a child's level and like a dialogue? And I don't mean it in an offensive way, bringing it to a child's level, because we speak to our children normally, but it really affects them. And we still wanna, and I know that Sal touched on it before, like create the safe space and maintain innocence of children. But, the kids think the world is bad. It is, but it's, like hearing that from your child, and that, my friends and I had a play date through a car in March, and I had to leave because my 7-year-old emotionally couldn't handle it. And she told me on the way home that she didn't want to live or be alive in a world where she wasn't allowed to love.
Wow. Yeah. How have you handled it up until now? Like, what have you said?
I mean, they're exposed to the news, they're in school, they see everything, and we just tell them it's going to get better, and they have play dates with their cousins and they see people. And, just like how Sal talked, the overabundance of technology now, meeting through Zooms and stuff like that, it's becoming their new norm. So it's not as difficult as it was, but I really think there's still major challenges.
And I think being honest with them about how you feel about it is the best way. It's a really scary, sad time right now, and we can only shelter our kids so much from it. Letting them know that you're there for them and that you're going to navigate it together and that they're safe with you is the best way. But the truth is the truth, like it's hard. Talking to my mother today, trying to educate her about how our culture is becoming more communist and like everything there was hard for me to say to her, actually. But I think being true to yourself and being honest and authentic is the only way to be. And so letting them know that they're protected with you, and that even though things are really hard right now and that you're struggling and that life hasn't been like this forever, we can't hide or keep them in a space of not knowing what's happening. But I think that also letting them know that most people are really being kept in a state of fear, that, explaining what fear is and how people are controlled in that space, and that your life is free right now to a certain degree. you know, um, it's not easy. I'm learning now too. This is the first time I've been in this situation for the last year with my kids. So, what I've done is just being honest with them. We don't watch the news, actually. I haven't watched the news in like 5 years. So I don't, the only thing I really care about is what my kids are learning from other people. But sorry, my phone is really screwed up. Ask me a more specific question about that.
I guess I'm just trying to like gather my own thoughts and what how to narrow it down.
Yeah. How do you explain corruption to kids? How do you explain what's happening right now? We're learning as we go, but I think, it's funny when I go out and I'm in a store, I don't like to wear a mask, so I pull it down. And my kids say to me, "Put it up, Mom. We don't want to get in trouble." And I hate that. I hate that they say that to me, because I don't want them to be controlled by fear. And so I guess I'm true to myself in all of this. And I tell them that we have to do what's right despite, and that the fear being promoted through media and everything around them is not truth. And I think we have to be in a space to be true to who we are and our beliefs, and our kids will follow suit. Because of their own conditioning with your kids in school, it might be challenging, but I think if you are true to who you are, they're going to either, resist it or embrace it. But my kids have always been part of this movement, so they know who I am. And even though they've been raised in freedom, they still are conditioned right now, this last year, to obey orders. And my kids wear their masks, even though I don't. Their choice. So I don't really have an answer other than saying that you should be who you are and convey what you want to convey and be who you are despite. But yeah, it's not an easy time to be alive right now, I'll tell you. But I explained to them that the media is false, and this is my own beliefs. And if anybody believes otherwise, I respect that. But my own beliefs are that this is all a control game, and I tell them the truth. And I show them videos. I have people that I watch and follow, and I have the videos playing when I'm making dinner about, from Mark Passio and other people that I really like. My son Devin, who's 21, he's an extreme prepper. He has 5 years of food backstocked, and he tells me I have to get a gun soon, and he's really afraid. And I hate that he lives in such fear because of all of this. But this is our life right now. And I think we have to let our kids feel what they're going to feel. We can't protect them from reality. If we do, they're going to be totally shocked, when they're older. And so right now is a really complicated time to educate people about this life, because we're learning as we go, But all I know to tell you is to be honest about your feelings and let them feel what they feel and support them in that. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Carmen's back in, and I think his question was aligned with mine, which was more so around discipline.
Okay.
You have good service now, Carmen?
Yeah. Coming through here now. I'm all plugged in.
I can hear you.
Is that true or choppy still?
I can hear you.
All right, cool. All right, so first of all, I think you were just commenting on COVID and kind of society and how it's fucked, and you were talking about not sheltering the kids. I want to just echo that. I agree with that. I even told my mom that. I was like, why didn't you tell me it was this messed up? I remember telling her that when I was 21. So I totally agree with that. Letting the kids just have to integrate with life and the reality that we find ourselves in. But my question had to do with physically aggressive children. I have a 3.5-year-old that I'm a stepfather to, who we call it frenzy mode. Like every night, like right around the same time, like she just kind of goes off on a frenzy of like just trying to do things to piss her mom off, trying to do things to piss her brother off, whatever it is. And like no amount of talking to her, no amount of like reasoning is like enough. Like she I feel like she feeds off of the fact that she's only being reasoned with, and she kind of, it's almost like a rush of like going mad with power. That's what it feels like to me from the outside looking in. How do you how do you explain like really young children who can't even conceptualize of certain things, like how and why being physically aggressive towards animals and their family is wrong, and actually get them to care about it? Like that's what we're struggling about, is getting her to, respect that. What do you say to that?
Well, for one, I would say the assumption of negative intent is where the problem is. Is she doing it truly to piss her mom off? Like a 3.5-year-old is not thinking like that. They're not, their brains aren't wired like that. Like they're thinking of their own needs. And I think when we assume negative intent that she's doing it to piss her mom off is wrong. What needs aren't being met, what needs are there underneath all of it. I think when we look through it like as a filter of what does she need? What does she want? And like take away the idea of like her behavior altogether. Like if she communicated her needs in like the sweetest voice or in like a really peaceful way, what would they be?
Sometimes I feel like she just wants to play, and she doesn't realize that like her playing is like hurting her brother or like hurting the cat. Cause like what I'll do is like she just wants to climb all over everything. So like I like to wrestle, so I'll let her climb all over me. It's like fun for me, I'm like laughing, she's laughing. But like I feel like sometimes her mom will be frustrated because we're being loud, and it's like it's a lot of energy, and the mom would like to set a boundary and be like, hey, look, Tate, this high energy thing, can we tone it down a little bit? And I guess I'm just trying to navigate the right thing to do, because I would, if it was up to me, I'd probably just play with her every time and just kind of let her crawl over me and like gas herself out, and have fun with it. It's fun for both of us. But I feel like when it's other people, like, like her brother, or even like sometimes she does it to the pets and stuff, that, then we run into this issue because we're trying to explain that, like, hey, I know you think you're playing, but like you're actually hurting the cat or you're hurting your brother. So what do you think? How do you address those things?
Well, I know that kids are always doing the best they can with what they know at the time. And assuming positive intent, if she's unable to understand that she's hurting other people, I would protect the other people. I would keep the cat from her and keep the brother from her. Because she's 3.5, she's little, and she just wants whatever she needs at the moment. And so she's not really understanding that she's hurting people. And so understanding that innocence and that purity and that beautiful, need within her, it's really important to take the responsibility to keep the animals and people safe from her intensity, basically. It's our responsibility to do that, not hers. And so, what need is being met? Like what is her need in that moment? Do you know?
To me, I think she just wants to play. Like she really just is trying to play, and she's just like a physical person. And I get that. Like I train jujitsu, like I wrestle with like adults, and it's fun for me. So like, I can see that. But I guess like it's like she can't see that like some people don't want to wrestle, and like she can't see how she affects them, I guess. And we're trying to teach that.
Okay, so if the needs of your cat and her brother are that they don't want to be hurt, then make sure their needs are met in another way, and be whatever she needs in that moment without like putting it on her that she's hurting them, because she obviously doesn't really understand that she is. Because kids want to do good. Kids are innocent in that way, and the way we preserve their innocence is to not assume they're doing something from the adult filter, that she's hurting them intentionally or that she wants attention or whatever. She it's so innocent and pure that she wants to play. And so we don't have to worry about like training them to like not hurt other things, because is she bad? Does she want to hurt other beings? Is that like what you think? I know it's not for you, Carmen, but I'm saying like, I think we have to see that for what it is, that she has energy and she needs to get it out, and you keep everything else safe in her wake and meet that need.
Thanks, Dana. That was really helpful. That kind of like reaffirms how I intuitively felt. It's just a struggle, sometimes when communication is challenging. Because at that age, it's so hard to talk to them about things like that.
I know, and we were thought of so differently when we were kids. People assume negative intent from us. Most of us, our whole childhoods, that we looked at behavior as like we assumed that they were looking through different filters than they were. So if she's like says so much energy that she hurts the cat and hurts family, that we have to just keep them safe and say she has a lot of energy, like let's keep the cat away, let's keep the brother away, and we wrestle with them and have fun. It'll naturally like evolve to a more healthy place for her, instead of us assuming negative intent. Because when we assume negative intent from kids, they become that. They become what we see them as. And so when you see her as sweet and kind and loving and everything she is, she becomes that too.
That's really deep. That's very helpful. I really appreciate your insight, Dana.
You're welcome.
Yeah, how you doing? I have a quick question. How do you teach a child like with the reality of the world and keep their innocence at the same time? Because I can think back like when I was a kid. Is there even a way to do that? So, like, I was always kind of like a problem solver, and I remember like on Easter, I was, my family used to hide Easter eggs all over the yard, and I remember going outside. I was like 6 or 7 years old, and my mom's like, "Go look over there," and I stopped and I looked at her, and I was like, "Well, if the Easter Bunny hid them, how do you know where they are?" And she just like kind of froze and stared at me, and she didn't know what to say. And I was like, "Easter Bunny isn't real, is it?" And she was like, "No," and she was honest with me. That's just an example. So how do you teach children about like the realities of the world and keep them innocent at the same time? Because it almost seems like it's like impossible, and obviously they're not gonna be innocent forever, but you don't want to strip them of that innocence at the same time, because the world really is like a magical, beautiful place, and it's also a really fucked up place too. So how do you manage that?
That's such a great question, because it's been such a journey for me. Like in the beginning, when I had my son 20 or 22 years ago, we believed, we did the Santa thing. And I think he was 4 when he said to me, "Is Santa real?" And I couldn't lie to him. I said, "Well," I didn't really know how to sidestep the question, because I wanted him to like feel the magic of all of it. And I said, "Well, what do you think?" And he said, I said, "What do you want to believe?" I asked him. And he said, "I know it's you guys, but I want to believe that it's magical." I said, "Okay, let's go with that feeling." And I asked him also, like, "Are you resentful toward me for telling you that Santa was a thing?" And he said, "No, I loved it. It was fun." I said, Did you know the whole time that we were lying to you?" And he said, "Well, I kind of knew it was like this like magical thing, and I went with the story." So from his, wisdom, I approached it with the other 3 kids. And so I would say Santa's coming and Easter Bunny's coming or whatever. And if they'd ask me directly, I'd tell them that, no, it's not us, but we love to like play the story. So I think you can live the magic without, as long as your kids are in on it, they want to believe and be magical. And that's something I really like about Waldorf philosophy. Actually, I always loved the magic in Waldorf. Waldorf has like tons of magic within it, but my kids were always conscious of knowing that it was like a story and magic and history. But I never lied to my kids when they asked me directly. And I was really worried. I think of my 3rd child, Ivy. She was 3, and she said to me, like, I like, she told me she liked that we played along. So I think engaging your kids with the magic that you want to play the story, like this is a story and we can like facilitate that for you. I think they want that, and you can play with it. They love play at that young age. And as long as they would play along with me, but they knew the truth that there wasn't really fairies and everything else associated with it. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but ask your kids what they believe. Ask
I was
them.
saying like even like bigger issues, like that was just kind of like a small issue, but like, you know, kind of like Charlotte brought up with like coronavirus and all these things, like, is there a way for them to like kind of like maintain that because like, you know, I envy children so much because they have that light and they have that innocence, and like someone like me, I kind of feel like the reality of the world hit me at a very young age because I was always doing research, I was always trying to find the truth, and it kind of like all the magic away, because then once the reality hit me of like what's really going on and all these people in charge, like you said, are corrupt, and you know, explaining all that to like children and like teaching them that kind of stuff is like kind of big. So it's like, how do you kind of, like I said, like maintain that innocence about them and bring up those real realities of the world at the same time?
I know my kids can only take in what they can handle at any given time. So, you know, I personally don't really buy into any of the news or anything, you know, mainstream, but I think that if kids want innocence and they want that part of their reality, they communicate that to parents. I don't know exactly to what extent my son Orion, who's 13, knows about everything happening, but he comes to me with it. And I think we do have to protect our kids to a certain degree. I don't mean shelter, but think about like what most people do. You know, most people in our culture watch the news and they convey this fear. And like, if you don't buy into it, your kids won't. You know, so there's a certain sheltering that comes naturally from our own, you know, actions. If we're like in a state of fear, our kids know. So I think we have to like really be mindful of what we let in and what we adopt for truth, and conveying that all the time is really important. You know, I asked my son Orion last week, or actually a couple of days ago, I said, I'm watching Mark Passio's talk on masks, you know, the whole information about like masks and what happened. And he said, I don't really care about it. I don't really care. I don't want that in my life. So the kids choose at a very young age what they want to let in, and trust your kids with what they want for information. So I think giving them resources and letting them know that you have more information about things if they want to know it, and letting them choose what they want to let in is really important. So it's kind of really hard right now with our culture. Before COVID, I was really cut and dry with what I shared, but things have changed, and I'm learning as I go. So I can only convey what I've done with my kids, but it's not easy. But I think just being honest with them about your truth is the answer. You know, conveying that to whatever degree they can handle. If they're receptive to it and they want to hear it, then convey it. If they shut down and they don't want to hear it, then stop. Trust your kids with what they're able to handle for as far as information.
I have a question if no one else does, but if I want to give other people a chance since I already asked a question.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mac.
Hey, Carmen. Cam, say hi.
What up,
All
guys?
right. Say hi. So this is the Anarchadelphia reunion, by the way. But anyways, where's Chloe? Where's Chloe? Not to derail the conversation, I have a very specific question. In Portland, Oregon, where we are right now, I have started a freedom cell essentially, / meetup kind of thing, similar to what Pat's doing. And we now have like a ton of mamas and kids that are ready to create like our own homeschool co-op situation. And I have a background in education, so people are kind of looking to me to help structure things, but I am in no way want the role of teacher, right? We're just guiding these amazing children who are all geniuses. And yeah, I was just wondering if you had any advice about us getting started, where basically we have different locations secured. Ideally, we want to do it like agorist barter style so that any family that's involved, here's Morgan, any family that's involved just has to like host one day and then their costs are covered. So it's kind of like a rotating thing. Teacher and guides can go where the space is. Anyways, just wondering if you have any guidance on that, because we're looking to get started here very soon and no one wants to do virtual schooling or any of that crap. And it's everyone's on board for unschooling essentially, but just in a group. So I'm curious if you have any advice for unschooling in groups. Thanks.
Yeah, there's a lot of co-ops that have unfolded with this philosophy. And I think it comes down to, offering things to your children that they might want to do and seeing how they feel about it. Again, every single question comes back to children's rights and what they want to know and trusting them on that path and introducing them to many different philosophies and beliefs and helping them find their own truth based on, who they are and being honest with them about your beliefs. So co-ops are great for unschooling. My kids have always been offered many different resources to learn and extend their knowledge. And yeah, what do you find is like a hard thing to tackle with all of this?
Well, since you asked, I'm specifically attempting to turn it into, I don't like the word job, but a money-making thing for me as kind of the main guide, being the main teacher, doing a lot of the organizing, whatever you want to say. I will be there with the kids the most hours, whether we rotate or whatever. So I'm trying to figure out how to monetize it. And that's the biggest thing right now, because parents are like, well, we're going to rent this really amazing ballroom and we had it all set up. And then last night we were like, we can't afford this. Why do we want to pay this money if we can just share our own homes? It's much more of a co-op homeschool style anyways, opposed to this drafty big room. Anyways, we're just kind of trying to tackle structures of compensating people for their time. And I'm really open to bartering, crypto, any of the things. So yeah, that's the big struggle right now.
What have you run into so far? Like, do parents, are they willing to pay for classes or?
Sorry, I lost my unmute button. Yeah, most people are willing to pay, but some people are like getting funded by the government right now for their childcare. And so they don't have a ton of money to put towards childcare, but they're interested in like volunteering and, trading off time for that. But yeah, just basically figuring out how to, there's, some other moms that have specialties, whether it's in art or drama, and they're going to teach elective classes. We have a wrestling coach. So we're just trying to figure out how to compensate everyone for their time in a way that feels fair.
Well, from a philosophical perspective, offering all these resources to kids and letting them choose is really where the base is. You really want to market to what the kids' needs are. So asking parents, what are your kids interested in? What do they want? What do they want to learn? What do they want to expand on? And finding out what the needs are of the children, not the parents, is a big deal. So that would be my main question. What are your kids like? It depends on the age group. When I'm planning events, I always find out what the kids want to learn. So I had never learned of anything about parkour, but when I planned an event in Texas, I learned that many 11 to 13-year-old boys love parkour. They wanted to learn about it. So I found a person to teach them that. And I was able to fill the space, fill the whole event. That section based on that. So when I'd be sending out information, I'd be sending it out what do your kids love? What are they drawn to? Because if that's the only thing that really matters is what the kids want. And so that would be my main focus. And parents want to facilitate that with their kids. Don't focus on the parents, focus on the kids the whole time. I think that was the success of my events was because I would ask parents these questions, with little kids, little girls, age 3 to 7, it would be princess parties. And so many were interested in zombies. It was kind of a weird thing. I sent this questionnaire out and little kids things that are really interesting. And so we did like a zombie princess party. And so we had like this whole, event based on this whole activity based on a tea party when the girls were dressed as zombies. So it was like really obscure and not things that you're normally thinking about. But kids want, you will sell classes based on what the kids want. So send out these, questions to parents about their kids. And I think in doing so, you kind of shift the focus based on what the parents think the kids should know to what the kids want. And parents want what their kids want. And when you offer these things, it gives parents permission to facilitate that. So whether it's, self-defense, karate classes, or zombie princess parties, or, parkour, like you can completely cater your talks and your events based on that. And you will sell the most that way.
Yeah. And at this point, it's not even about making money. It's about coming together and just having a happy co-creative space for our children where they're not seeing people in masks and we're just doing normal things like growing a garden. And my girlfriend, Maggie, who I don't know if she's still on the call, but she must be because she's listening. She just texted me and said, okay, we have the topic for our next meeting. What do the kids want? Where do they want to meet? And what do they want to learn?
Yes.
It's perfect.
Perfect.
They're present at every meeting. But I can't say that the focus has 100% been them. And I think making that shift is going to be huge. So thank you.
And I think that monetizing it's really a viable thing. Like you need to. Money is kind of a tricky thing with unschooling parents because we feel like we should be just giving without any compensation, but you should be able to be compensated for your time. So I think we have to break down the fear of like making money off, supporting kids on these, in their interests. And no, you should totally be thinking of money because the more money we can make off facilitating these things, the more we can give. Money is like a really taboo thing. And I think we have to break through that and understand that kids will have their needs met if we're compensated and we can like give them more because we have families too, like I had to really get over that in the last 20 years. I gave so much of my time for free. And when I was able to make money off of what I'm doing, I'm able to give more because, your time is valuable. Your time is. So don't be afraid of asking for money for these things and organizing things around that. So, do like a total brainstorm with the kids, like even if it's like really weird, like we did a whole, we did so many weird talks that most people would think is really weird. Like the kids were all interested at the time, like 5 years ago in The Walking Dead. So many kids love The Walking Dead. So how can you educate kids based on that one interest, The Walking Dead? We contacted so many people to like be able to bring this information to them. And so it might seem really weird to like do a talk surrounding Fortnite, but how can you like do a talk and bring kids education based on this one interest? But, so many interests branch off of each interest each interest, my phone is screwed up. How can you bring information that kids can learn and grow from based on what they love? So even if it seems like really like they couldn't learn from something, we did a talk on American Girl dolls, we did a talk on Walking Dead, we did zombie princess parties, we did so many different, informational talks on whatever the kids loved. And we paid people to come in and talk about these things, experts based on these kind of things. We facilitated meet and greets based on these interests. So we had Chandler Riggs, who was Carl on The Walking Dead, come and talk to our group. We typical mom. Anyway, who's next?
I'm sure she can still hear you, but I have an interesting question.
Sure.
It's more directed towards the parents of these children and to touch back on coronavirus and educating them on how the public school system has been restructured and how that is so far from normal, and the new normal of separating kids 6 feet away from each other and giving them mask breaks for behavior, putting tape on the floor in schools and hand sanitizing stations is about control and conditioning. And I think it was Rockefeller said that they want to churn out workers rather than thinkers and learners. And we have to realize that this upcoming generation will be essentially the teachers of, you know, the coming generations. So a lot of people, you know, they might have, they're very busy with their jobs. So they almost see the public school system as like a babysitter, but they have to realize what they're subjecting their children to is so far from normal. And, you know, with having to have mandatory vaccines, you know, the propaganda and the news is incredibly strong. And a lot of people really do believe what they see on TV. And how do we go about educating these people to realize what they're subjecting their children to?
Well, it depends on the parents' beliefs. You know, if you're in this mindset of knowing how corrupt everything is, like the most damaging thing you can do is keep your kids in that system. But I think addressing parents' fears is really important. You know, what are you fearing taking your kids out of school? You know, I'd love to hear from anybody listening, like, what are your fears taking your kids out of the whole dynamic of school? Because there's nothing more damaging than what's happening right now in schools. And so, yeah, that's where it all begins.
Hey, we homeschooled. Sorry, I'm not on video. It's my husband's face, but we homeschooled for a couple of years, and we ran into the problem of actually our neighbor had called Family and Children's Services because they seen school-age children in the yard playing during school hours all the time. And so someone actually came out to our house, and I had to show them the curriculum. We were using a pretty set curriculum that had like an attendance book, report cards. I mean, it had everything with it. And so it was really easy to show them that we were doing school at home. But how do you get around the system basically of not having a curriculum for your kids?
In the government's house.
Great question. So we had CPS called on us once, about 7 years ago, after we were on TV, and people, it was like 20 reports, I think, that were, you know, wanting us to, that challenged our life. And you have to lie, actually, to be straight up. You have to lie and jump through hoops that they want you to.
You have just like a false attendance sheet or something like
Yeah.
that?
Oh, definitely. I would lie all day long for my children's freedom. We don't want to. Like, none of us want to be these people. You know, we don't want to be liars. We don't want to have to do this, but it's wrong. You know, when you believe in your heart that what's being done is wrong, this is what control does. Think of kids when they're little. You know, when you're controlling them and punishing them and threatening their freedom, they lie. They become people that they're not wanting to be. We don't want to be these people, but we have to be for our kids' freedom. So before New Hampshire, I live in Miami now, but before that, New Hampshire before 2013 had, we had to take like standardized tests. I would take the test for the kids, for their freedom. I hated it. I didn't want to be that person, but it was more important to me than forcing them to do something that wasn't right. So I think you have to really be certain in what's right in your heart. You know, you have to know truth and know what's wrong, what's being done, and don't doubt yourself in that. You know, I'm not somebody who would ever want to be manipulative or lie or anything like that, but I did, because my kids' freedom mattered more to me than anything else. So I would take the test. And half of it I didn't even freaking know, which is so funny. You know, fourth grade test didn't even know half the information on it, but I would do it. The other option is like finding an unschooling friendly evaluator. So New Hampshire, in our experience, like had we could either do a test or find an evaluator, and we found somebody who was really in alignment with this philosophy and could translate everything our kids were doing into like schoolese. We call it schoolese, and like school language. So we'd travel and she would translate it into like what they learned, and that was fine too. So there's ways around all of this. It's what corruption does. It's what power does. It makes us people that we don't want to be, but we have to right now in our culture. So I think that knowing that, you know, people that know you know you're a good person, but if your kid's freedom comes before anything else, sometimes you have to do what you don't want to do for it. Is that scary to you?
I'm sorry, one of my kids came out here. I'm gonna have to go inside with her, but no, that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm sorry. It's the nature of our culture right now, but you know, no one's going to ever take my kids' freedom away, ever.
Is there anything we can do? Like, because I was in a situation like that too, with like a crazy neighbor calling CPS, and it really is like this like powerless situation where like they're like some weird court of their own. They're like outside of normal court jurisdictions, and they just have all the power, and you have to lie and just appease them so they get off your back. Is there, because like the warrior in me just wants to destroy that force ultimately. Like, is there something we can do as a collective to like make this so it's not so simple for these people to just come in and essentially kidnap our children?
I just think right now in our culture, it's not time. When it comes to CPS, you have to jump through hoops. You know, before they came to my door and I was fucking panicked. Like, I was like, what the hell, you know, like, but I knew what I had to do to have freedom. And so before they came back, I put out a bunch of like puzzles and like learning things everywhere. I didn't approach it like when they came to the door, like, you have no rights. No, you can't. They'll you know, you can't approach it with like this animosity right now. You have to jump through hoops for your freedom, and you have to become who you weren't, just like you did when you were kids, to be able to have this freedom. And I know it sounds crazy, but we can't play with our kids in our lives. So the truth is, you know, I set my whole house up to look like this big homeschooling environment. You know, I put things on a dry erase board that look like that we're doing school. I put puzzles out, like games out, like everything. It looked like a schoolroom in our house because I knew that's what I had to do. I had to, or they'd take my kids away, possibly. So you have to jump through hoops where our culture is now. I think there's a time and place for us to like change school reform, but not when our kids are concerned and their freedom and us being with them. We can't mess with it. So I educate couples about this, like families about this. Like, I have people call me who say that their, you know, family has been contacted by CPS, and what can we do? And I share with them how to make their homes look the way they should to be able to get it to not be have their kids taken away. So it sucks. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in the space. But the truth is, we have to, we can't like be in a place to oppose it, or it's a red flag. Move to a different country that doesn't have these rules. But right now, here's where we're at. And so my son, Devin, actually, out of all the kids, when the CPS came, I think he was maybe 12. No, he was 14. He said, I'll talk to the person. And I said, are you sure? And he actually talked about unschooling, which I was really nervous about because I knew they wouldn't really get it. But I think our openness and our graciousness, like right now, our culture just wants to be treated well, you know, when somebody comes to your house. So when they came back, I was like, hi, welcome, come on in, you know, come on, would you like a cup of tea? And oh my gosh, come on and look at our, you know, I was really kind. Like, kindness goes really far with CPS. If we're in a space to look like radical people, like, you have no right, you can't come in, and, you know, F you, it'll be a red flag. So we welcomed her in, and we were really kind, and Devin explained how he learns what he learns. And he was kind of in the space of being an advocate at the time. He's not anymore, but he was then. And kissing their ass and being, you know, lovely to them. The people take shit personally. So if you're in a place to be like mean to somebody, they will report you just for that fact that you're mean to them. So you can get around everything with kindness and love and compassion, and understanding that these people are only doing their job, and that they have to like hit a set of criteria. And so they were totally fine after even though we were living our free life, we were nice to them, and that really, you know, enabled our freedom. So as much as I want to say, like, fight the power, when it comes to CPS, you play their game and you jump through the hoops that you have to, and you lie if you have to for freedom. The time will come when our kids are grown and we have nothing to lose, where we can jump in that space of like fighting it. But now is we can't risk our kids' lives. We can't risk our family. Anyway, I know that's kind of hard to hear, but
just to provide maybe a slightly different or maybe more optimistic perspective. So I have a coworker who's in her mid 40s, and as a side note, she's probably the most social of the bunch of us actually in our small team, and which is funny given like the social kind of conversation a lot of people have about homeschooling. But she was homeschooled in her whole life, like basically through all of primary school. And she would talk about how it was definitely weird as a little kid to have this random stranger show up and kind of, and I guess it's a superintendent every couple months or weeks, and just kind of just sanity check and make sure things are okay. And like, nobody in this chat is really the people that they're worried about, but there are those people that they are worried about, that the kids are really not learning, and it's potentially like an abusive situation, who knows. But in her description, basically after a couple of years, like the superintendent like was basically their friend, and when she showed up to come see how things were going, there was and I'm assuming they're just as gracious as you're describing. But by the end of it, it's like you have a relationship with this person, and they're like at the root of all of this, like they're actually still people, even if they're kind of enforcing, the state's rules with ostensible violence. But even as a kid, like like I said, in her mid 40s, she's kind of able to look back and have that early, really strange negative experience that kind of transformed into an okay, understanding kind of experience.
yeah, exactly. So people are people. And when whoever approaches your home and wants to come in, if you treat them respectfully and kindly, they're not going to want to see you fall. They know that you don't want your kids taken away from you. And so I think sinking down into that human condition space of being kind to people is really the answer. Even though our hearts want to tell us to tell them to fuck off and like all of that, we can't right now. It's not time for that. So yeah, people will be on your side. This woman wrote like this whole wonderful thing about our family. And I knew that if I was to like be mean to her, she would write us up. So people are individuals who want to be treated respectfully, and they're only doing their jobs. It sucks. I hate their jobs, but I've had friends who are, unschooling now who were working for CPS, and they told me inside stuff, and that people have been written up to have their kids taken away just based on how a family treated them. So kindness and peace really are the answer. And we have nothing to fear if we can be in that space.
Treat people like people. I did post in
Yes.
chat. Carlos Morales has a fantastic book called Legally Kidnapped, The Case Against Child Protective Services. And he was a ex-CPS worker, and just kind of details the madness that goes down. And but that aside, forgive me if this is already asked or answered. But ironically, I feel like people were, I don't know, people saw people that went home, that wanted to homeschool their kids as like out there or whatever a year and a half ago. But those exact same people, ever since the Rona hit, are like super pro homeschooling. And so is it almost a little bit easier, kind of in a sardonic, ironic way right now?
It's so much easier. Yeah, so much easier. No one's looking at us right now. No one's looking at unschoolers who are not reporting or not. Do you know that 50% of unschoolers in our culture, in our country right now, do not report? They're all underground, and nobody's looking at us right now. It's not even an issue. So the time where we can fear the least is right now. Now is the perfect time to parent this way and to unschool, because nobody cares. There's too many other issues right now. And I've never been able to be underground because of my public, image and public stuff that I do. But in Florida right now, we moved here, and I won't report, no way, until somebody tells me I have to. So if your kids are younger than 6 and you haven't reported, said you're going to homeschool, nobody will know you even exist. Like, don't even report. Don't even get caught in that system if you can help it. The worst thing you can do is to say that you're homeschooling, because then people are like looking at you. There's so many people in our world right now. Nobody's looking at you unless you tell them they should. So yeah, it's a really, really, really safe time. The safest time ever to homeschool your kids is right now. questions.
What's the worst and best thing you've experienced homeschooling or unschooling?
Wow. The best thing is being true to myself and my kids and their freedom. The worst is looking at social media. That's like the worst, actually, because whatever you feel and whatever you're like reading and taking yourself affects your kids. So the best thing you can do is like to not look at things that are negative about it. My journey is different than everybody else's. I mean, I've been doing this for 21 years and my journey is different than most people's, but so my family was on the Dr. Phil show like 17 years ago, and it was a really intense situation where Dr. Phil asked us, you know, really question. It was like really radical then, and maybe it still is. I don't even know, but it's really radical then. And the message boards on the Dr. Phil show after our episode on unschooling went for 2.5 years. The longest running message boards after a show in Dr. Phil history. In fact, they asked me to come back on, and I'm happy to do it. But the worst thing is reading people's comments, because it really affects you, because we're so conditioned to be approved of, even though you no matter how evolved you think you are, and no matter how above that you think you are, we are still conditioned. You know, we still have so much within us that we have to get over. And so reading negative comments about freedom in our life and is the biggest mistake I've made, because I feel nervous about our freedom. But the biggest joys and positives are my kids. You know, before I lived this life, it was only based on philosophy. I would see and read about other people who have done this. You know, back when I started, there was one website, about unschooling, and it was only like a little part of it. And I would read this woman's information. I trusted it, you know, like I knew in my heart that this was right. And so I just believed in my kids. And that was really what led me. I have no regrets out of anything in my life that I've ever done, ever. The only thing I don't regret, with no regrets, is how I parented my kids. So it's not easy to walk this path. It's not easy to be thought of as weird, because it triggers so much in us that we were conditioned to believe is okay. Being accepted. You know, there's nobody I know in my area right now that lives this life, but I look at my kids and I know they're healthy and whole, maybe not perfectly because of my own stuff, but nothing matters other than them. So my kids are my biggest successes, I guess, not because of what they've done or who they are. It's just their happiness and their wholeness. We spend our whole lives as adults trying to heal from our childhoods. And I really feel like if we can give our kids like a better life than we had, learning and all of the stuff that people are worried about doesn't matter above wholeness and freedom. So even though I might fuck it up a little bit, which I probably have here and there because of my own stuff, they're still better off than I was. So if we can give this generation like a little bit better than we had, that's really where it's at for me. So.
Wow, that was deep. That was awesome, Dayna. Thanks for sharing that. I have another question about, what do you find are the best ways to handle when you and the other parent have a disagreement about if something's unschooling or not, you know what I mean? Or like if we should be doing this or not. Like, sometimes in my experience, my significant other wants to take the technology away sometimes as like a consequence. And like, I don't know, I don't jive with that. And then there's other situations where I want to be more stern and, she thinks that I'm crossing the line. So like, how do you recommend going about that when you have disagreements within the marriage or the parenting?
It really is how you go about it. My ex-husband, when I presented to him when Devin was 2, my oldest, I remember telling him that I've learned this new way. I don't want to punish our kids, and I want them to feel in control of their lives. And I don't believe in hitting them or timeouts or anything like that, because I think it takes them away from what's right. It makes it more about them pleasing us and being fearful. And he said to me, I'll never forget it. He said to me, I feel, even though I agree with what you're saying, my whole childhood, my whole teen years, I had to obey other people. I had to listen to what was told of me, and I had to respect it and do what they said. And I thought when I became a parent, that would all change. And I thought that finally I'd be obeyed. Finally I was in this role of being obeyed after my whole childhood of having to obey others. And he said, I feel gypped. And I think men more than women feel this, because I think men are much more controlled when they're kids, and I empathized with that. And I said, I understand. I'm so sorry that you feel that, because I get it, but that's not what I want to do. I don't feel it's right. And I think men have to go through kind of a mourning period of not being obeyed, and understanding that they may have lost their childhoods in that way, but there's something better. So, I feel empathy for men who are coming into this life, and you're shifting paradigms, because they feel, I think when you live this life, men have to face what they went through. Everybody does, but men, especially in my experience, that men have to face the fact that they were controlled and limited and essentially abused. And that's a really heavy thing to have on you, to face without anger toward those who controlled you, because they only knew what they knew, and they only could do what they, what was done to them. And so mourning that process of what was taken from you is really important in order to step into this life. So as far as, arguing over, what to do and control, I think just honoring your process and where you're at, it's really about us more than the kids. And that in itself is a huge deal. So most of the issues that come up with parents, it has to do with our own childhood. And I just hurt for parents who have to step into this life sometimes, because I know that they have to face their own past in order to do it. And that's really heavy. So I can't really speak on much further than that, other than, anytime you take something away, or you use external force or anything external motivation based on trying to get your kids to be a certain way, it won't work. It's totally futile. It's like a short-term gain, but on the other end of it, it's going to be dysfunction. So taking something away, you can in the moment control kids to feel like a good parent. But in the long term, it's damaging. So the hard work comes from facing, handling things from a partnership-based dynamic. And it does cause upheaval in relationships. It does. When we're in a space of having one foot in each paradigm, our relationships are so rocky. No matter how much you love each other, no matter how much you want this being in this world, we're broken. And so it's this deep work for us to be able to learn to teach our kids what's right and what's good for them, versus the short-term gain of feeling like a good parent because you're limiting something. Anyway, there's a lot more to it, but it's really deep, I know.
Yeah, it goes to the core. That was a great answer. Thanks. Do you have I guess, and to just follow it up, I guess more what I was asking is what happens when parents specifically have a disagreement about what is unschooling and what is not. For example, in your Radical Unschooling group, there are so many debates over is this unschooling, is this not unschooling? And I feel like that happens in parental discussions. Is this unschooling? Is there a Bible, or you know what I mean? Is there a reference that you can go to I guess hash out what is and what isn't, or is it more gray?
You don't want to follow any dogma of any kind of philosophy, including this one. I always tell parents they can only give as much freedom as they can handle based on who they are and their past and anything like that. So this isn't like a dogmatic rules or no rules philosophy. It's based on what feels right to you at the time. And I think you need to make mistakes, and you need to take things away, and you need to limit to feel what that feels like in your relationship with your kids. So it's complicated in that way, but being true to yourself while honoring your kids is a journey for sure. So don't listen to dogma or rules, even in this philosophy, because it's not right to do that. You have to like find who you are and, have the philosophy of like trying to always grow and give freedom in any way that you can, but you have your own limits based on your upbringing and your beliefs. So yeah. Sorry, not a cut and dry answer, but just be who you are and communicate your beliefs and find some kind of middle ground.
Awesome. Thanks. That was very helpful. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Adam, was it Adam? Somebody was raising their hand. You're muted.
I was waving to Mackenzie's son, but I'll ask. I thought he might call on me because I was doing that, so I thought up a question real fast.
Okay.
What if I don't have any kids yet, but I hate the state. So what if you're doing some sort of alternative schooling with your kids and say they get up to be like 8 or 9 years old and they express interest in going to state school? What would you do?
I would totally respect it. I would let them go. Yeah. While giving information about what to expect. A lot of times parents think they have to just let their kids go, but without, cultivating and facilitating any of it. So I would advise to let a child experience it for a day. Go with them. Schools will allow more things than most people realize. Like if you contacted a school and said, my child wants to see what it's like for a day, and then have them decide after being there for a day and seeing the disrespect and like all that goes on there, I think they'd change their mind, most of them. I think 90% of kids would not want to go after they experienced it for a day. So our culture in like TV and media, they promote school as being like this rite of passage and like really fun. And my kids had like a totally false idea of what school was based on like iCarly and these shows, but the reality was not at all what they thought. So we went to a school to film something, to film a documentary. And after they went, they were like, wow, this is nothing like we saw growing up on TV. So I think that kids that want to go they don't know what it is. Because of course the media will promote school as being like fun and exciting and necessary, but trust your kids on their path. But I would totally respect their choice to go. So they can learn for themselves. We don't want kids to just listen to our advice. We want them to find out on their own.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's say another really cool thing is that, well, sports is such a big part of public school systems. I never played sports, but community organized sports, like what my sister's boyfriend is doing right now, he created a hockey rink down at the local skate park in the lake. And it's really created this awesome congregation of like this sort of a community-based sports, event that could turn into a league-based gathering. And if we could get together and create more of these sports or events or maybe alternatives to what the public school system does, we'd be less reliant on these programs that they offer in the public school system, because of course that comes with the indoctrination.
What was your question, Pat? I'm sorry. My son came out. So
It wasn't really a question. I was just saying that creating sports is such a heavy influence on people putting their kids into the public school system because they want them to be a part of the community, the sports, the public school system. But my sister's boyfriend created a hockey rink down at the local lake, and it's outside of the school, and I see it has potential to grow into, potentially a hockey sports league that's outside of the system, and we need more of that. We need more community organization outside of the public school system, because it comes with so much indoctrination.
Definitely. And I think that we need to have people leading these groups who are respectful to kids, and respectful, like change the philosophy behind all of it. That if a child chooses it, that it's really beneficial. That the whole competition mindset in our culture is really sick. And I think organized sports and like school and can be really damaging. But if kids really want to be part of it, you can make it consensual and you can make it fun. It's part of, who we are as humans. So I love that your brother-in-law. Yeah. Who?
Brother-in-law,
Brother-in-law, yeah, is doing that. And making sure that the kids are respected and not forced to do things. Because people like to be pushed. I think Carmen can touch on that, because I think like him being part of martial arts, like if somebody's consensually in that dynamic, they're choosing the discipline, they're choosing that, and so it really has to do with honoring children and their choices. And if sometimes we have to be pushed and we have to be, encouraged to compete. And I think if a human being wants that, that's really healthy and good. It all has to do with like children's freedoms and what the parents want. And if the parents pushing a child, it's really obvious, in their performance and who they are. So yeah, community groups are much more healthy than school,
Yeah, Dana, I agree. I was thinking that when you said it, like when you were thinking that, I was thinking of, because I taught kids martial arts, and I watched like their enthusiasm for it and their enthusiasm for like mastering their bodies and stuff like that, give them like confidence and like, just like, faith in themselves. So like, yeah, that's very good if the children seek it out. But then on the other hand, like my dad like forced me to play baseball when I thought baseball was like so boring. And like that was like sort of the negative. So yeah, it's important that it comes from choice, but it can be very healthy if it is from choice. I agree.
Yeah, definitely. I was in ballet for like 3 years when I was younger. And I competed, not competed, I don't know what the word is for ballet, but I was in like a group that was like chosen to perform in front of like the Queen of England's secretary. It was like this special thing. And I was, there was a girl I was with that we performed with, and she got like high honors and I got like the second down. And I quit ballet. And I wished my mother had like encouraged me to get over that fear that I was second best. And I wish she was in tune with me enough to know that I still wanted to do ballet versus, she respected my wishes, but she was more hands off. Like, okay, you want to quit? You want to quit? I wish she was so in tune with me that she would have encouraged me to keep going, because I don't know who I'd be today if I would have been encouraged, because I really didn't want to quit ballet, but I felt so bad coming second best that she never encouraged me. And I think it really takes knowing our kids, knowing what they really want, because I was so embarrassed that I didn't come first that I stopped. And I have regrets to this day that I never really conveyed to my mother that I wanted to keep going. But I think with our kids, when you know them and you know what their passion is and you know what they want to do, we can really better facilitate that. So it's not about like not encouraging kids. It's not about being hands off and just like, okay, if you don't want to go. It's about saying like, what do you really want? If my mother would have asked me, like, what do you really want? Who are you? Like, what do you do? Don't feel bad that you came in second. You could still do it. You should keep going. You come in first someday. It's not about coming first or second. It's funny. My son, Devin, I think of him as my best friend. He just messaged me, actually. So sweet. I spoke in Australia, like, I don't know, 7 years ago, I think, at the first ever Australian Unschooling Conference. And we went, part of the trip was going to the Great Barrier Reef. And I was petrified to snorkel, like petrified. I was so afraid of, like, I had seen all these documentaries on like the Irukandji jellyfish and how it would kill me. And I was petrified to go. And he turned to me and said, Mom, I know you want this and I know you can do it. And he said, I'll go with you. I'll hold your arm. And I said, I can't do it. I can't. I'm too freaked out. I'm not going to go. And he said, I know you and I know you want to do it. And so he found somebody else to go with me. It was totally embarrassing, actually. But I had a friend hold one arm and he held the other arm. And even though I said no at first, he knew me. He knew my needs. He knew what I wanted.
Oh, did we lose her?
He knew what I wanted to experience. And he said, Mom, wait. And he dove down and he touched the clam and it closed. And it was the most exhilarating experience of my life, even though I was petrified. Now, he would have known if I would have said, I definitely don't want to do this. You know, there's a big difference when your kids don't want to do something versus they need pushing and they need encouragement. But you only know this when you're in tune with your kids. And
We'll see if she comes back. Looks like she's having some bandwidth issues.
Mercury retrograde.
That's right. Thanks again for everyone coming.
Pat, thank you for organizing this. Incredible stuff, man. Incredible stuff. And everybody that's on this call, this is all my homies. What up? I love you guys. This is great.
It's 50-50 mountaintoppers, and I think we lost Dayna. Would have been nice to say goodbye, but it's 50% mountaintoppers and a lot of these really great influential people that I've met along the way. So really have to make an impact here. So if you're from the mountaintop, please spread the word about next Thursday. Max Egan will be joining us. Max Egan is a wizard, a mesmerizer, and he has some very incredible insight. And Haley, I'm coming to your house to eat that right after this.
Stoked for Max. It's going to be awesome.
You should hear it.
Sounds delish. Hey, what's up, Shane? I see you lurking in the back there.
Yeah, I was really happy that she or whoever asked about the system and keeping this, like getting out of it. And like, what about CPS? Because that was the main question with me. So all you mountain toppers up here, I have a 7-month-old. We're going to be hanging out at home. She might be running in the yard a bunch, but.
Yeah, CBS is no joke. I mean, it's crazy. Like basically all you need to get them on your tail is just for somebody to call them up and just say whatever. They can just make shit up and then they're on your back. So it is a weird, frustrating thing. Cause as like a man, it is so frustrating to like placate these people when all you want to do is just unleash the totality of your wrath on them for threatening your family. So it's important that we, before we get in these situations, learn the rules in the game. And I learned that firsthand. Thankfully, my partner was like, you know, like a master at it. She like masterfully got them to go away, and then we fled the state. But I'm not recommending going that far out. But I mean, just at least know what you're getting into with them, because
treat it like talking to the cops, man.
It's worse. No, it's worse. You have way more. You can be a dick to cops as long as you know the law. You can be way more aggressive with cops. Like it's just my experience. But the CPS, they're like outside of the main judicial system. Like they don't respond the same way. Like checks and balances. There's no like court proceedings. It's just all self-contained within CPS. The entirety of their proceedings.
Can bring in,
so that's why it's dangerous.
You can bring in cops with the ostensible reality that a kid is being harmed, and which is basically you see a cop in his worst fucking moment, more or less. Like it. Yeah, I agree. That's all I'm saying. Don't fuck around with CPS. It's not worth it.
It's like Mark Passio says, these people are order followers. They don't know, they're robots, and they're just following orders. And they just think that they're doing their job, and they don't even think of like the morality of the situation. So they just want a paycheck.
This is the truth.
You piss them off, and they could fuck your life up.
To be fair, very few people have fucking paychecks right now. Comparatively.
That's why you got to get into crypto.
Phase 2 of the conversation.
I know that's why everyone probably came here also. I mean, I know we all wanted to see Dayna, of course.
That's great.
Like we
Hey,
said,
she just said her phone died. She just needs the link again. She messaged me for the link. I'm gonna see if I can get it to her, but you should probably send it to her too, Pat. She's trying to get her phone,
I did. I'll send it to you because what are you talking to her on? Facebook or something?
Yeah, she messaged me on Facebook.
Yeah, I don't use that.
Yeah.
Fascist Nazi book.
Am I crazy? Like the link you sent out has like a passcode, but I've never been asked to use the passcode. Or does the link, I guess, just have it built in or something?
Depends. Last time people were asking me for the passcode, so it gives you two options. Figured I'd send them one with the passcode. I was trying to figure out how to not admit people because I've been having to admit people anytime they want to log in, but I'll figure that stuff out eventually.
I think the passcode might be actually like part of like query params in the URL or something. It's like hash encoded or something.
You would know that.
I'm just gonna say goodnight to everyone. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Really
Oh, great night, Corinne.
Have a good
Thanks for
night.
coming.
Yeah.
Hope to see you next Thursday.
See you there.
Cool.
Bye.
Later.
I hope all the questions from us without kids were still helpful.
I think so. I got a lot out of that.
Me too. I really like the biggest takeaway for me is just like trust, man. Trust your kids, like for real, and like be honest and open. And like that's been my experience with my parents. I love my old hippie mom more than life itself, and like that was like one of the biggest things that she would just trust me to. She would be open to if I asked a question, no matter how weird it was. She was honest with it. I don't know. I was joking with TJ earlier. It's like I was like 10 years old, and like a friend's older brother was like, "Hey man, you should see Clockwork Orange." And I like went back and told my mom that like that night or the next night. And I was like, "Hey mom, I heard I should watch this movie called Clockwork Orange." So we went out, we rent the Laserdisc, and she watched Clockwork Orange with me when I was 10 years old. And you know what? I really, really respect and appreciate that, because I was going to go, you know what I mean? The toothpaste out of the tube. I was going to find out about it or look it up one way or another, but like to have her there with me while I'm watching it as a little kid to help understand what the hell I'm actually seeing, I think it's actually really, really important, and totally kind of, I don't know. There's a certain level of just trust there that I hope everybody gets.
Yeah, I've always had that with my mother personally, and she was always against smoking so much, which is probably why I'm like a heavy smoker. 2 days trying to quit so far, doing pretty good. But she smacked the shit out of me for when she caught me once, and like that scared me straight. So I went to great lengths to wear gloves or smoke with my feet or bend out a hanger and smoke it and like have like lotion and just like all that, just because so she wouldn't ask me. Because if she did ask me, I would tell her the truth, and then I'd probably get a beat down, out of love, of course,
I don't recommend the capital punishment like that personally, but whatever.
What are you doing? You know what I mean? Big against smoking. But I think it might have found a way, right? I know. It might have had an impact on why I smoke so much now. Thinking about it. But Mom, I love you.
Yeah, that's the irony, and I think that's a lot of what Dayna talks about. Is like
she's about to come back.
I know, like my biggest thing is like I curse a lot, and why do I curse a lot? Because my parents were like, no cursing in the house. Like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. So now every other word is like sailor. You know what I mean? I got the same thing.
Hey, Dayna.
Hi, sorry about that. My battery died.
Totally cool.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
That was
Oh my God, I can see everybody now. I could only see one speaker at a time before. Now I'm really overwhelmed.
For everybody else's sake, that's the view option on the top right. You can switch between gallery view, which is like everybody equally, versus speaker view. Pat, I hope when you're recording, you're using speaker view, because I think the end recording is much nicer. But
I'm not actually. I kind of like the gallery view because you could see everybody's reaction. But yeah, I wish you could record it on both. But doesn't matter. I'll record the next one on speaker.
Next time I'll record in speaker view, you record gallery, and we'll figure it out.
Boom.
So thanks for coming back, Dayna.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your time. We're almost going on 3 hours. Fantastic. Seriously, really appreciate it.
I love it. That's what I do. I love it. So keep them coming. More questions.
Dayna, what crypto are you bullish on?
Oh God. Bitcoin. I don't know.
Enough.
That's like a trick. I don't know.
Solid answer.
I'm learning still.
All right, I have another question, because this is actually the most intriguing thing to me about kids is like the progression of their level of consciousness as they age. and like you just see it. You see like their expansive way to understand language and other things. Is there like a timeline, a general timeline of when you introduce certain things to like parenting in general based on, you know, what a kid can absorb, or is it different for every kid?
I think that we were told that kids are ready like with certain windows. You know, like if we miss this window, we'll miss their opportunity for learning. But my kids tell me, you know, I'm ready to give them information based on what they tell me they're ready for. And you have to take advantage of like whenever that time is. So it's not like a big guessing game. Like they come to you and you know, ride that and share. Anything in particular or?
No, that's kind of been my approach. Like to me, it seems that like a lot of it is coming from a space of trying to honor the kids' desires and natural inclinations as best you can. And when it comes to like their expansive knowledge, like for example, like the 3.5-year-old, her language skills just like exponentially shot up. Like it felt like overnight, like her ability to like form sentences and have like long form conversations. And like I guess responding to that stimuli is like the proper way to encourage more of that behavior, seeing that, oh, she wants to talk more now, let's have long form conversations, let's get into it, and using your kids' desires as a metric for how to push it. Like the older kid loves Fortnite, and like at first I was a little nervous because he like really loves it, but like he's learning so much about numbers and about percentages and strategy, and his reflexes are getting better, and he can think and talk and all that faster. So it's actually been pretty beneficial.
Yeah, you know when your kids are ready for things because they come to you and let you know, basically, based on what they're interested in. Yeah, it's not like a big guessing game. It's pretty easy, actually. You don't have to like do anything other than have discussions with your kids. My kids have learned more from me discussing things with them than anything else. So talk to them. You know, tell them what your thoughts are about things. There's times where I'm in my kitchen, like cooking. My kids are out here, and I'm thinking things. And it's really been a lot for me to be able to like verbalize that. So I tell them when I'm thinking something, like, you know, I think of this about this, and I kind of have to verbalize what my thoughts are. And they're really interested. You know, they really love that I share with them whatever my thoughts are. And maybe I overshare sometimes, but they let me know when I do, you know.
I'm guilty of that as well.
Yeah.
But I find that like when you are in a sharing mode, they open up more and they share like, you know, like deeper things about, you know, their insights and stuff. And yeah, it does create this like space of openness that allows them to really flower into who they are. I agree.
Yeah. There's so many times I've been so conditioned to you know, my childhood to think things and not verbalize it. But this life has enabled me to like really like pull that out. And so if I'm thinking something, I just speak it out loud. And that's like really good basis and foundation for learning when I do that. So whether it's I'm making a salad and I'm like, oh, well, you know, what do you guys think organic is versus non-organic? And do you think organic is like a scam? Or do you think, you know, we just always talk about things. And I think my kids learn so much from taking my thoughts from my mind to, you know, the verbal space really helps them a lot.
Awesome. So.
Yeah. You guys must have more questions. Come on, ask me anything. I'm here. My kids are occupied. I like don't have this time normally, so please utilize me.
All right. So this is actually a question that it's resonated personally. What is it like? Because I know what it's like from my perspective, being a stepdad. What do you find, like, what is your perspective as a mother when you date men and they step into the role of stepdad? What are some of, like, what is that like for you? Like, what does it feel like?
Well, I haven't really been in that place with a man where he's a stepdad role. But what I'd be looking for is a man who just kind of comes into my experience and you know, respects my kids and their journey. And oh my God, That's such a hardcore question, Carmen.
You asked for it.
I know. I don't know. Like, I haven't been there yet. So I think that I would be like, I would really take my kids' feelings into consideration. And, you know, if somebody came to see me that I was dating and they were uncomfortable with me sleeping in the same room, or I would just hear it all and like respect them, basically. You know, I really would only date a man that like understood this philosophy, actually, which is very rare, quite rare. So I haven't found him yet, but I'll let you know when I get there.
Sounds good. Thanks.
You're welcome. How have you handled it, Carmen? Tell us your journey with that.
Okay. Well, for anybody who isn't aware, I this year stepped into the role as a stepfather of 2 children. I met a woman named Alma Summer, and we are now a family. And to me, you know, we met in Acapulco. We had like a, you know, really nice time. I say it was our honeymoon. And, you know, when she told me she had kids, I didn't mind. I already taught kids. I love kids. You know, they're funny. I feel like I relate more to kids sometimes than grown-ups. And then it was almost like because she wanted to see what the dynamic was like, she came and decided to bring her kids out and come stay with me for a while, because that mattered to her, like, significantly, you know, how we were to interact. And it was crazy. It was so nuts to just have my lifestyle of like a single bachelor guy who lives by himself just get complete. Now I got these 2 kids. They're running around the house. They're drawing the walls. I'm experiencing. I just get thrown into the fire, and it was so fun and exciting for me that, you know, it became a beautiful situation. Now there were always challenges, and a lot of the challenges stem from, in the beginning, I felt like I didn't have a place to step into the role of like a parent, because you're so afraid of, you know, you don't want to feel like you're stepping on this woman's territory by like trying to, you know, I guess like if she wants you to be a parent, you have to respect that. You know what I mean? So like that's where I was at first, but my situation, she wanted exactly that. She wanted another parent, like she wanted that in a partner, and thankfully that worked out for me, because that's kind of how I wanted to play it too, because that's a normal family dynamic for me, like the 2-parent family. So I mean, it was challenging when I was like on the learning curve, because obviously she had been a mom for like 6 years and I was just getting into it. So that was challenging. But ultimately, what was the best thing about it was that I chose to, and she allowed me to love her children like they were my own, and really come out of that space. And that is why it's been such a great spot for everybody involved, is because that was allowed to happen. She didn't put up like a resistance, and I didn't hold back in my love for them at all, for whatever reason. So I think that I guess that's the advice I would offer the women, is like, allow the man to come in and be the father if that's what you want. And for the men, like, understand that these kids are this woman's everything. And that's like the most important thing that you have to honor about her. And their kids are awesome. So like, just play with them and like love them, and you'll have a great time.
Oh, I think like many of us can relate to, you know, step parents can be more of a parent to us than their own parents. You know, my stepfather, I've had a few stepfathers actually, and my stepfather married my mother when he was 16 and I was 5. And I never knew his age, you know, like that didn't affect me, like the age difference, but he cared about me, and my own father never did. And so I think that step parents have a really important role on this path for sure. And, you know, this life is really radical, I think, for most people. So finding a man that really gets it is really important. And I've dated a few guys here and there, but none of which my kids liked. None of which I could like really invite in that space, because they were really, you know, how they feel is really important to me. So I think that a man that understands this philosophy is really important, or a woman, based on whoever you are. But yeah, I think that anything could work. You know, 50% of marriages end in divorce, as you guys know, and most of which end because of conflicts in philosophy. And my ex was really, even though he was my children's father, he would not get on board with not being mean to me. You know, even though he didn't hit the kids, he still yelled at them, and I was not on board with that. So to make the decision to be alone versus having my kids witness that was really a big deal. I think the true test came when, you know, my ex was really controlling with everything, and he didn't treat me well. And my daughter, Tiffany, who's 19 now, when she was 16, she was dating a guy, and he was really controlling to her. And I could hear their conversations, and I could hear how he was treating her, and she thought it was okay. And that was really the wake-up call for me to end the relationship, because I realized that I was modeling, no matter how much I talked about worldwide, you know, about peace and freedom and kindness and love and compassion. When I saw her in a relationship like I was in, I took the responsibility to end it, because I realized that I don't care what, you know, it doesn't matter what she sees me talk about. What I'm living is the most important. And so that was like the springboard for me to say, I can't live this anymore, because it's being hypocritical. And, you know, sometimes we think that staying with somebody based on, you know, our past, you know, my parents were divorced, and we went through so much when I was a kid. And I swore I would never end a marriage and divorce. And I never wanted to be that person that gave up. But I put up with a lot. And in the end of it, my kids are so much happier now that I'm happy. When I saw the transformation that my daughter Tiffany went through when I left the unhappy marriage, it changed everything. And so to me, I know now that parents that are happy and content, and you know, it's the center for everything for my kids. So your happiness as a parent, and your fulfillment, and your taking responsibility for your life in that way, really is what models everything. So step parents are awesome. They really are. I have a stepfather now who lives in England. My mother has been there for 25 years. And I didn't meet him. They didn't get together till I was like in my 20s, but he's been more of a dad to me than my own dad. So think outside the box and do what feels right to you, because your kids will really learn a lot from that. So I'm so happy, Carmen, that you're with your stepkids, because you're really an inspiration to me. Like how much you love your stepkids makes me want to cry every single time you talk to me about it, because my stepfather loves me, you know, and he cares for me. And it's not really blood or DNA that makes a family. It's people that love you and get you and support you. So yeah.
Wow, Dayna, thank you for sharing all of that. That was really, really like emotionally like driving. And I appreciate that. That's really kind.
You inspire me. You have, since you posted about it publicly like a year ago or whenever it was.
I appreciate that. Well, I mean, I feel like we all inspire each other. Like I literally like have been like trying to model a lot of how I interact with the kids based on, you know, everything that you put out. You know, like I feel like a lot of us have to be the example here for other people, but for ourselves as well, you know, to hold each other accountable. Because I'm sure like everybody has made mistakes on this journey, and like to be here in support, but to also hold each other accountable is such a powerful thing.
Every time I hear about how much you love your stepkids, it just melts my heart, because I think every mother that's single, you know, wants that for their kids. They want a man that will love her kids. And you're doing a great job. So I'm really grateful you're here. You know, your stepkids will always know that you were their dad, not cared.
Thanks, Dayna. Jeez, wow. I'm blushing hard. This is so funny. I'm like speechless. Dude, it's just, it feels natural, because like you're right. It is the woman's deepest desire. And what is the greatest thing you can do for your woman other than her desire? That is to love her children like they're your own. Like, dude, it's easy. Kids are awesome. Like, it's just like see them for who they are, and just like, you know, let them be what they are, and they'll love you for that, you know. And then it's just one big happy family. It's great. It seriously is the best thing ever.
Awesome.
And I would encourage anybody else who falls in love with somebody or who starts dating somebody that because I know a lot of people on this call aren't parents yet. If you do meet somebody who's a parent, don't let it like off put you. Like, this is the best relationship situation I've ever been because it's a family situation. Like all the boyfriend girlfriend stuff's cute, but like there's something so much deeper about the endeavor of being there for a child that like creates such a deeper bond that I think a lot of people would really benefit from and are probably already secretly desiring.
Yeah.
So I have a less heavy question from my mother. That was great.
Sure.
And that was
Yes,
great. That was
please.
great, Carmen. She says, how do you get a kid to become honest that has been putting up walls against adults their entire life?
Well, I think dishonesty comes from control. Kids don't have to lie if they can be who they are without you forbidding it or punishing them for doing so. So my kids have never had to lie to me that I know of, because I've always embraced whatever their truth is, and they have freedom to do what they want, when they want, anytime they want. But what do most people think of when they hear that? I think most people get really scared thinking that kids want to be crazy and like, I think that's a really important thing, that my kids have freedom to stay out as late as they want. They have freedom to be with who they want. Yeah. So when you're not the wall standing between your kids and their desires, they don't have to lie. I'm looking at Mackenzie and her friend. Hi.
I'm sure she heard your answer.
Adam, I have a visitor. She wanted to say hello to you. Hi.
He's not even smiling.
He doesn't even say. It's okay. We didn't have a question though.
Okay. So human beings lie when people lie. Lying is like a really weird thing. People lie when they want to feel better, about who they are and about their choices. But if our kids feel okay with who they are, they don't really have to lie. I know it sounds like really utopian, but it's true. If you're not happy, you lie. If you're not, being controlled, you lie. If you're being controlled, you lie. If you're not being controlled, you're honest. So does your mom have a more specific question, or?
No, I think it's pretty open-ended. She's just doing some work right now, listening in. She just texted me that, so I think that was good.
Okay. Any other questions, guys?
We are rolling over the 3-hour mark, so maybe we could end it here.
Okay.
I think it would be great if you came back on at a later time. Maybe we can build a bigger audience as word spreads.
It's a pretty big audience right now, though. It's pretty big.
Yeah, it was good. We had about 35 people at one point.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my call kept dropping out and it's kind of glitchy, but.
It's fine. That's fine. We really appreciate you taking the time to come down.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to be here for you in any capacity I can. So reach out if you have questions or need support.
Great, sounds good. I don't think we'll end the call just yet, because I think some people want to potentially talk about crypto or anything else. We want to have some sort of open discussion. We don't want to keep everybody too long. Anybody else want to talk about anything, or what do you think?
I just want to say thanks to Dayna for all of the insight. It has been invaluable. I just want to, obviously iterate what everybody else is thinking and say a huge thank you for all of the good vibes and all of the great advice and the 20 years of experience that you have over pretty much all of us. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to come here. Thank you, Pat, for inviting me.
Yeah, we have to do it again. Definitely do it again sometime
That's great.
soon.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening, and good luck to you.
Awesome.
Thanks again,
Thank you.
Dana. Thank
You're welcome.
you.
Okay, guys, bye.
Thanks, have a
Thank
good
you.
See you later. Feel free to stick around for a little if you want.
Thanks,
I mean, this
Dana.
call might
You're
end
welcome.
pretty
I'll hang
pretty
out.
soon,
It's all
but
good.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank
where's
you.
everybody at?
Dana.
How you feeling? What's the price of ether?
1800.
Is it really?
It's something like that. Man.
No. I'm just checking.
1789.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I didn't expect that to run so long, but it was just such valuable information that you couldn't put a stop to it.
Yeah. Also, little tip of advice: instead of buying bonds, like which people used to do for kids, like I know a lot of like older people buy like newborns bonds, like government bonds. Like, dude, just buy a kid a little crypto stash, send it to a wallet, and just let it accrue. Neo's got $150 in Bitcoin already, and it's just gonna keep going up. And he's like 6 years old. You know what I mean? So that's a little financial advice. If instead of getting government bonds like I got, just get them into crypto. Just make little accounts for them.
Very
And
cool.
and that'll be like that'll pay for everything. You know what I mean?
Also, you don't have to buy the cryptocurrency. You can just create a wallet and start accepting it for your skills, services, whatever it may be. And Dana's in a great position to start doing that. You know, there's a very large audience. Download a wallet like that and say, I accept Bitcoin now. Could be a smart move.
You have to help me, Pat.
I definitely will.
Okay.
All right. So one last question about the sheltering of the kids.
Cool.
How long do you wait until you tell them that the Earth's flat?
Love
I
that
actually have told
question.
them, like I give them information so they can make their own decision, about the truth. So my son Devin thinks I'm crazy for thinking that, but I allow that. Let your kids make their own decisions based on information that that they find and that you provide. Yeah, I think that's a really big part of it. Don't get attached to anything that they believe.
And aside from the children, I'm going to bring on Watson Atkinson, who's a pretty hardcore, knowledgeable geocentrist flat earther in the coming weeks. So it's not just about the kids, but also got to share the information with the adults. Make up your own mind, of course.
I have no attachment to what my kids believe.
But
I
can
trust
tell you
their path.
there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 flat earthers on this call currently right now. So that I know for a fact.
It's funny, my son Devin, who is like a hardcore prepper, I sent him a link to Mark Passio's talk, one of his talks, and I'm so excited. He's like so in the space of like, he said, Mom, I hate that you're an anarchist, but now I get it. Like we have to allow our kids to think whatever they want of us. I think that's a really important thing. My son thinking I'm crazy for so many years, it's really important. Like it didn't define my motherhood. He respects me more now than he did maybe 10 years ago, but be yourself and give your kids information and they'll come to it when they want.
Yeah. Awesome.
So everybody feeling a little gassed out?
Yeah, I'm supposed to be picking up a couple people are coming to stay with us in a little bit. Tara and Julian actually, so I'm gonna get the RV ready for them for their passing through.
Cool.
So I'm gonna hop off the call. But dude, everything has been so great. Pat, thank you for setting this up. Dana, thank you for the insight. Floey, it was great to see and hear from Floey too.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful that we got to do this, and let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep trying to build it.
Awesome.
Got any speaker suggestions or anybody that you want to invite in? Let's just keep building it. We can have 100 people in here, so it's kind of first come, first serve, but I think it's going to turn into something really cool. Feel
Oh,
free to
yeah.
feel free to put it on the State of Anarchy.
Oh yeah, 100%, dude. Just you
Cool.
know, link me up. Send me some files.
Sounds good. Much love, buddy.
All right, peace, everybody. It was great talking. Bye, Mackenzie. Bye, Dana. Bye, Pat. Bye, Floyd. Bye, everyone.
Later.